Hello, everybody. Welcome to the show. Hope you guys are having a good Saturday evening. I am Brendan. That is Brandon. And we are together once again because the Seahawks season is starting any day now, anytime now. And we got to put some stuff on the table before it gets started. We got to risk a little bit of our credibility here, right? You got to risk a little to get a little, right?
No risk it, no biscuit, as the former coach Arians used to say.
hmm So tonight's show is going to be all about schedule predictions. We're going to go through every game. We're going to go through every matchup. We're going to talk it through. We're going to try to figure out how the Seahawks are going to do this year. So, going to be fun. Hope you guys are ready for that. It is a staple of any offseason talk of any fan base, right? The schedule prediction. You go through it, WWL, WLLW. Every fan base does it. You know they do.
And especially right now, it's different than when the originally schedule releases, and we kind of make some soft predictions at that time. Whereas now, when we're making these predictions, Brendan, we know a little bit more about where these teams are standing. We're not trying to take too much away from preseason, but you can get certain kind of vibes from certain teams that you might not be sure of where they're going to stand coming into the season. Just giving you a firmer outlook for where they're probably going to go for the upcoming year.
All right. So I'm going to lead off with another topic of conversation, though, because there was some stuff that happened in the last several days. The Seahawks got down to a 53-man roster and a 16-man practice squad. I'm not going to spend time on every little thing that happened. There's no need for that. But one interesting thing that did transpire was the Seahawks made two waiver wire claims of players that were released when every team had to get down to 53. And there really weren't that many. So it is notable. It's not like every team had a bunch of waiver wire claims. There were a handful across the league. A lot of teams had none. So that gives you an idea that this is significant. We like these guys. So I want to ask you a little bit about both of these players that we picked up.
Mm.
So the first guy was I believe, fifth round draft pick of the Baltimore Ravens. Did not make their team though. It is Q Blue Kelly, I believe is how you pronounce it. Q Blue Kelly.
Q.
Yeah, so this was a guy I remember scouting and talking about briefly on pre-draft streams. But do you have much of anything on Q Blue?
Yeah, I actually probably a little bit more knowledgeable of him than the other guy in as much tape we watched a little more on Blue. He's toolsy, very toolsy. I mean, he's kind of he hits all of the minimal markers that the Seahawks tend to look for in the cornerback room as far as 6 foot tall, 32-inch long arms. You run a certain at least 4.5 speed that you're running. They like the 4.4 guys too, but then this guy takes the 4.5 speed and he adds onto it the really, really fast 10-yard split, really explosive broad jumper. He's got the what I would say are the physical, tangible skills that the Seahawks have tended to gravitate towards when it comes to the cornerback position. I would estimate that he's probably not still with the Ravens because he was a guy when you watch the tape, there's some stuff for him to clean up. He's got a little bit of ways to go. But this is a guy that you're giving as kind of a raw goods type of player that you give to Coach Carroll and go, okay, do your magic, Coach C. This is the kind of guy that you tend to mold through. We got the raw stuff you need for him to have that you can't teach. Now teach the stuff that he needs to learn. So that's probably why they jumped onto it. And I've got to say, Brendan, that they have to be really excited about this guy because of the fact that Artie Burns was playing so well for you. I mean, he looked really, really good in that final Green Packer game, especially, but throughout the preseason in coverage and tackling, looking every bit of a veteran presence out there that you hope to have as that fifth corner on this roster. So I think it does speak to the fact they look at this kid and say, the upside here is worth it. The long-term view of this kid is worth it for us to put this investment in him.
Yeah, when I looked at him, I recall thinking I would like this guy if I thought we were running man coverage because I thought he would be a good fit for man. But I wasn't super interested because at the time, I believed we were just going to keep doing the same zone stuff we've always done. But with the knowledge that I have now, I got to say, I think it completely changes your perspective because I think this guy showed some real man coverage skills and is built for man coverage. So you keep building this evidence that this team is actually going to commit to this. Are they going to actually commit to doing man coverage this year more? And then you see the guys they get, the guys they have, and it's like, it just makes too much sense. This team has to do it. This team just has to commit to the man coverage. Look at all these guys they have that can do it. So I'm feeling pretty good about it from that angle.
It all goes in alignment, Brendan. If they don't do it, they're sort of leaving a potential real advantage they have on the table with the personnel they do have on the roster if they just choose to ignore it this upcoming season. If we're dropping into depth and coverage every game, you and I are going to be talking about this in retrospect, saying, why won't they take advantage of this thing where they have the talent to do this on the team? It's one thing when you don't have the talent. When you have zone-based corners, as we had for years, that were zone-based corners, tried and true, you don't want to ask them to do anything else. I get it when you say, I'm not going to put that guy in a man situation. He's going to get torched. But when I have corners that are built to do that other stuff, like a Witherspoon, like a Tariq Woolen, or like a guy like this, Q Kelly, utilize them for that, utilize them for what they do best, put them in a position to succeed. And I think it goes together again too with Adams and Bobby Wagner being good blitzers in there, and Julian Love and what he can do from a man style side of things as well. It all the lines, Brendan. But here's the thing with this, here's the rub, buddy, is we've got Coach Carroll ingrained in his concepts. And yeah, he transitioned away from the cover 3 last year, going away from 70% to like 35% of the time, but still the predominant amount of your coverages are still zone, are still dropping to depth. And that's the bridge that he's going to have to cross for us to get here to the other side of this if they're going to utilize this.
Right. So Q Blue Kelly, I think we're both pretty intrigued by that. Kind of a good, seems like a good pickup. Seems like somebody who could even make a meaningful contribution this year at some point, and I wouldn't be shocked.
Yes, I could see him eventually, and if not even just this year, a developmental guy that give Carroll a year in the room with him that does end up, being able to really tap into that great ability that he does have. 149 10-yard split is absolutely back to the future fire trails you're leaving behind you as you're running at that quickness.
The other guy, little less well known. This was a UDFA, but he had a great preseason in Las Vegas for the Raiders. It is Drake Thomas of North Carolina State, a linebacker. I looked at a bunch of his stats from the preseason. It was like he was second in tackles among all rookies. He had the fewest coverage yards allowed of a rookie linebacker. He had a bunch of really nice stats like that from the preseason. And Josh McDaniels was very unhappy that they weren't able to keep him around. He said as much. So any thoughts on Drake Thomas?
I mean, he seems like a gamer. Because you look at him, he is 5'11", 225. Not only are you then undersized from a size standpoint and also probably a length standpoint, he didn't go to the combine, but then, you also are underweight as well. And that probably was too much of a measure for the general manager with the Raiders to hold on to him at that point, thinking that's where is this going to go? It's like a little bit like the Levi Bell situation. You're 6'1", 265. You looked really good in the preseason. But those base kind of metrics you're operating off of, how much hope could I really have for you to on an NFL field going up against guys that have arms that are 3 inches longer than you and guys that outweigh you by 35 pounds? How are you going to, how are you going to get around that? And, there's some measure here to me, Brendan, of a guy like a BBK. I mean, what is this exact staunch difference between a BBK and a Drake Thomas? In the way that they win and what they do. And Drake did have a good preseason, no doubt about it. I'm not trying to undersell that. And maybe the Seahawks saw some kind of flash and they really like, but I don't think at his size that he's much more than really for this team, a special teams guy down the road, if he isn't even going to be active on game day.
Yeah, I think this guy is going to add something with the special teamer. I will say that's kind of the upshot here. I scouted this guy before the draft, I remember. And I did come away feeling like I think this guy will at the very least be a good special teamer. I don't know about the fit in a 3-4 where you typically need to be a little bit bigger and you need to be willing to take on blockers or capable of taking on blockers, I guess I should say. And I don't know if that's him, but there's room for players in the NFL like this for sure.
And we've got a lot of room here at the middle linebacker position to have some fun with it, I would say, right? For lack of a better term, because you are locked in with Bush, Brooks, and Wagner as it stands right now, but you don't have a long-term outlook as a plan goes. And you can kind of afford to do these kind of penny stocks on players' assets, right? You bring a guy like this as a penny stock, but if he is to hit, maybe he is just that good. You've gotten a middle linebacker in the future at a very cheap rate. And there's no overhead to do it either.
Yeah, he's like Josh Rojas. You brought him in thinking he'll be the 25th man. He'll be about as good as Abe Toro. And then, no, he's better.
Exactly. Exactly. And if it fails, there's no loss if it fails out, but if it does bring back the other side of it, then hey, we've taken the flyer on a guy that, whereas I don't think the guys they looked at on their roster, like a BBK, for instance, or whatnot, or maybe even a Radigan, that they look at and go, well, this is a guy that long term we know has some kind of plan in place for us to look at him as a future starter.
Right. All right. So I think that's really all we can say about those two guys. Neither of us are super well versed. They were part of our scouting process before the draft, but so were 250 other players or whatever. But
Exactly.
not bad. I'd say we came out of
No.
that waiver wire process better than we were before, or at least as good. So that's cool.
And there wasn't any guys. I mean, the waiver wire list, I don't know if you had the same experience when you looked at it, Brendan, but you look at the waiver wire list, and I was expecting with all of those guys to be released on one day as I was going team by team to find, maybe even one every 4 teams, I'll find at least one player that, but I was going through going, nope, 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 nope. And I just kept, every point of the list you go down, I just kept landing at that spot. And I was like, man, this is an underwhelming list of guys.
Yeah, there were some guys, but they were also kind of long shots, Hail Mary types. Nothing that I was really excited about. I mean, like I would have been excited for Jared Clark, but I know the limitations there. I know the problems there. There were some definite guys on the defensive line who were interesting, but none of them who I felt were like, there was no Al Woods out there. There's no like, oh yeah, bring that guy in. He's going to give you plus level defensive line play for the rest of the year. There wasn't much like that.
Agreed. It was just there. I think at the heart of that too, Brendan, is that there wasn't anybody getting cut for cap purposes. Everybody was being cut for performance related reasons because so many teams have cap that they're sitting on. So if they have a good player, they can keep him. Even if he's a guy that's a little expensive, they can keep him. They got the money to do it. And that made this a little bit weirder. It was hard to predict though. This was a first time off for us and knowing what we were going to have and what was going to be available out there.
Mm-hmm. All right. So let's go ahead and turn the page. I want to take a look at some of these messages real quick though. We've got a member message from Snail, member for 10 months. I believe he's a member on both of our channels.
Let's go, Snail.
And hope you're enjoying Starfield as much as I am. Well, I'll tell you, I am actually very happy so far with Starfield. I'm like 8 hours in, and I'm pretty impressed.
Okay. Mm-hmm. I'm trying to sell myself on it and some of the reviews with it, but it's like it's I don't know. It just seems like a little livelier No Man's Sky a little bit in what I'm hearing to a degree, but
it's Fallout in space.
Yeah.
That's basically the way I can put it. And I love Fallout. Yeah. And Fallout 4 was a little disappointing. I think this is like if Fallout 4 was a little more committed to being a true RPG. Mm-hmm. So I really appreciate that because Fallout 4 tried to just kind of start moving towards being a shooter, but it wasn't a very good shooter. Like this is more, I like the shooting mechanics better than Fallout 4, but it's also really embracing the RPG stuff. So I'm impressed.
I'll probably eventually give it a try too. Mm-hmm. I'm slow to sell on games now because I've been so bitter through the last few years and some of the experiences. Mm-hmm. That's good to hear. It's good.
Mm-hmm. All right. Garth Knight, thank you for the $4.99. I'm enjoying these simulcasts. Just out of curiosity, do mods from one channel transfer their power to the other? They do not.
They do not. No.
Yeah. That'd be funny though if I had a mod who just hated you for some reason I didn't know, and then it just like starts banning everybody in your chat.
Oh, like, seriously. I finally have the power. Like they suddenly one day, whoa. Oh, wait, it works over here now.
All right. So
I got a real quick thank you. I got on my side. Russell Mark Q, thank you for becoming a new member of the channel on my side. Appreciate you for doing that.
All right, Russell Mark Q, shout out to you. I've seen you on my side as well.
Let's go.
All right. So with that out of the way, let's take a look at this schedule here. Now, some of you may remember that on the day the schedule was released back in, I want to say March, maybe April, me and Brandon did go through it and offer up predictions, but a lot has changed since then. A lot has changed. So we're going to have to go over it with a new set of eyes. We're going to have to go over it with new knowledge and see what we come up with, see where we might agree, see where we might disagree, and figure out how this season's going to go for the Seahawks. So you ready?
Let's do it.
All right, so we're going to start with next week at home, September 10th, so 8 days away now, against the Los Angeles Rams. We already know no Jamal Adams, almost certainly no Devin Witherspoon, And at this point, probably no Cooper Kupp, which might be a bigger deal to them than those injuries are to us, really, when you think about it.
You take that trade, right? If you came in this game and said you can have no Adams and no Witherspoon, but then we don't get a Cooper Kupp.
Yeah, this Rams team is so top heavy that losing one of their top players is just like the boat goes down instantly.
It does. It isn't no Titanic sinking. It's one of those right underneath the water.
All right. So what you got? What do you got to say about this one?
This is what the kids call, Brendan, an easy clap. Okay. And I'm sorry if I'm going to be super over the top of this a little bit, but it is that to me. I look at this and view it as this is one where you should absolutely throttle this team. There is no reason for them to be competing with you. This isn't even where you can say this is a midweek game in the middle of the season and your team's having a hard time getting up for the game because they know how bad that team is. They can catch you unaware. It's the first game of the season. Everyone's going to be hyped up. You're at home. I love the fact the NFL schedule makers gave us this is the first game out the gate to kind of wet your beak and get yourself kind of figured out in the first opening part of your season. But yeah, this is to me a 2-touchdown win all day.
Yeah, I got to agree with that one. This is like when Oregon schedules Portland State week 1.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I mean, this is the NFL equivalent anyway. I know there's no NFL equivalent to that, but this is as close as it gets.
It literally is close. It does not get this. The Rams as bad a team as they are this year. You don't, and the amount of rookies they're starting, Brendan, it's basically like facing a college team a little bit.
Yeah. Like I said, this Rams team, they've got, let's call it 3 good players with Kupp, Donald, and I'll say Stafford's good for now, although I'm really not convinced that he's coming back from that injury close to what he was. I'm really not sure that ends well.
No, I would not put money on him starting all the games this season. I'd go the other way with that one.
Yeah. Then they've got a few decent players on like their offensive line. They Havenstein, I think they still have. They've got Brian Allen. I think he's still there. Decent. Not that great. They got some receiver talent that's frisky behind Kupp, like Van Jefferson and Tutu Atwell. Not really good, but they've been known to make a play from time to time. Higbee's pretty good. And then it just goes off a cliff and you immediately get down to like rookies and guys who are just there to collect a paycheck for another season.
Yeah, agreed. It's just looking at this roster right now. I give the Rams props, Brennan, because they knew when the time was to sell everything out and go all in. And now they've known the time to turn it all back and over. But doing that also comes with the paying of the price. And if you're going to rebuild and go full into that mode, not just halfway it or 3/4 of it, but they're going 99.9% into rebuild mode this year, then you're going to suffer the pain of that with a lot of losses on your schedule. And when you play good teams, you're definitely going to probably lose to those teams like we are up against them this opening week. Just not enough to work with. Defensively, it's even more empty than it is offensively for them. You know, it's Donald and who's their second best player, Brendan?
On defense?
Who's the second best player?
Kobe Durant. John Johnson.
Yeah. So it's Gino and the boys should be walking it up and down the field over and over again here. This upcoming Sunday, I would suspect. Double Donald, though, please, for the love of God. For all that is good in the good world, double Donald. We'll get into this in our preview show, but for the love of sweet almighty.
Yeah, and I've seen a lot of comments from people saying, things along the line of, hey, you can't take this team lightly. We barely beat them twice last year when they didn't have Donald or Kupp, and they always play us tough. And just understand, I just want to establish I don't care. Yeah. I don't care.
Yeah.
All right. Not because it can't happen, but because if it does happen, there's no excuse for it. There will be, in fact, I'm going to take a pledge right now. If we do lose to the Rams, you will not catch me on the video right after that game sitting here saying, well, they got Aaron Donald, they got Cooper Kupp. They're not that bad. They're an okay team. They play it. No, it's not. No, not okay.
You don't have a lot of places on your schedule where there are places that you look at and go, we have this win. We are better than this team. We're more talented than this team. We're deeper than this team. We're playing this game at home. You can add everything up that you want to add up to it. But at the end of the day, when you're this more thoroughly ahead of a team and they come back and they beat you on your home field in that moment, that, to your point, is inexcusable. And if this team really wants to be a contending team this upcoming season and consider themselves out, then they got to take care of business against these worst team in the league like teams, like a Rams or like a Cardinals that we'll talk about. And that's just the way it goes if you want to be a contender. Otherwise, maybe you're just not a contender. Maybe you're just going to be a fringe playoff team that's still trying to find its way as a youthful but very talented football team.
So yeah, multiple score win here. Multiple score win.
Yes, sir.
Mm-hmm. The Snail, thank you for the $12 dono. Speaking of predictions, future Seahawks QB Cam Ward, 38 of 50, 446 yards, 3 touchdowns, 12 carries for 40 yards, and 1 touchdown today. Have they not played yet?
Huh. I guess they were late game.
Yeah. So long to the 8 p.m. start time, by the way, next year when we move and we're playing Northwestern at like 11 a.m. every week.
Well, I don't like the 11 a.m.s. That's going to suck, but I mean, the 8 in the evening game start times are kind of ridiculous too, especially college football because the games can last so long when they just start dragging.
And you're trying to impress voters. If all the voters go to sleep before your game starts, then you can't impress anybody.
Yeah.
So yeah, okay.
I wish they get to a 4 o'clock time though. I hate that 11 a.m. stuff. Like doing the morning stuff for those football players is just like the 10 a.m.s. It's just lame.
Oh, wait a minute. Okay, they did play Colorado State, and Cam Ward did have he did have a monster game. This is not a prediction. This is literally just what happened. Okay, thank you, Snail. That's very cute.
He meant he called that shot. That's what he means, Brennan.
But I continue to like Cam Ward, although there were a lot of college quarterbacks to like today. A lot of them.
It's going to be a hell of a process. We're going to have to do 2 quarterback prospect shows when we eventually come around to the draft with as many of these guys, because there's going to be so much to talk about, to your point. And it's Cam, Penix looking good. I mean,
I'm already on that Joe Milton train. I'm already on that Joe Milton wagon. He does it all.
Bro, I you know me, I'm an Armstrong whore. That's that. When it comes to quarterback, I want my guy to have the cannon. I want my guy to be able to make every NFL throw. And Milton is nobody has a stronger arm in college football than Milton, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm. All right, here. And we also have a new membership on my side. This is Stephen A. Simmons. Thank you. Welcome to the membership club.
Sup,
and Russell Marqueux, you shouted this guy out becoming a member on your channel, right?
He's joining you now.
Mm-hmm. Oh, okay, cool. Russell Marqueux, welcome. Thank you for the membership. Welcome to the club. And Concierge with Nolan, thank you for the $12. Cam Ward or Michael Penix Jr. threw for 450 and 5 touchdowns. Yeah, they both showed up today.
Both look great, and we'll see if we can track it through this season. And if they both, it's in the Seahawks, to me, best interest. We have just as many of these guys out as performing as well as they possibly can, so that we can end up with a guy that slides into the second, third round who's got a lot more talent than deserved to be there. But because it's such a big, wide breadth of a draft class with the quarterbacks, they just happen to get lost in the shuffle, and then we get to pounce. That's the conditions that were created with the Russell Wilson situation. That was a situation with, remember too, Kirk Cousins went like in the 3rd round that year.
Right.
So you had a year where there was a lot of quarterbacks, and you were able to take advantage of that time and that situation. I hope that we look to do the same here this upcoming season. I make a strong prediction, Brendan. I really do feel like between the 2nd and 4th round, Schneider is going to jump this year on one of these guys. He
should. He absolutely should.
Absolutely should. And it'd be silly kind of not to, with the amount of guys that they're going to be out there.
Yeah. He has that thing about how we like to take a quarterback every year, except for the last 10 years.
Yeah, it's the last 10 years. But yeah, I think he does double his way back around to it. And you should. This will be a good year to do it, because you'll get a hell of a player there in that 2nd, 3rd round.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Let's see here. The Snail, thank you for the $2. Future Seahawk QB is okay.
There we go. Okay.
I mean, he should be right in that 2nd to 4th round wheelhouse, right?
He's very much in play. In fact, he might be more in play than a guy like Penix, quite frankly, because I'm not so certain that Penix doesn't just get taken in that Kenny Pickett range of the draft, 20 to 32-ish. Some team in there jumps in on him,
I'll tell you, we can't run the ball, so we are going to throw the ball for 500 yards every single game. So
yeah. And if he does that, that's 2 years back to back that he's put up that production. And to me, if he doesn't get in the 1st round range, it's kind of like, well, what does a guy got to do at that point from the QB position to I know he's an older prospect, which will diminish him a little bit, but that's stunning production for a 2-year period. And it's not like that the previous QB at Washington was just putting up all those stats, right? Like it wasn't like you go, well, just they're a machine there and you put anybody in there and they'll just throw for 1,000,000 yards. No, this guy came in and has been lighting it up in a unique way.
Garth Knight, thank you for the $4.99 again. It's great to have the Killer Bees streaming tonight while I mourn the passing of the Bay City Rollers 3 years ago. Thank you both.
That's unfortunate.
Not familiar with the Bay City Rollers.
I'm not as much as
Are they
well.
Barbershop Quartet?
I think that weren't they the roller derby? Isn't that the female thing where they roll around and they crush each other up on the walls and stuff?
Oh, okay. I've seen that. I'm not familiar with it though.
I'm not as familiar with it either. No, it does look like fun. It gets brutal too.
Mm-hmm. All right. So
thanks, Garth. Appreciate you though, man.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you, Garth. Okay, so we both have our team at 1-0 heading into week 2 on the road. The Motor City Detroit Lions.
Madmen.
Yeah. They're going to be biting kneecaps. They're going to be doing a lot of other things that you definitely should never do, but they're going to do it anyway. 10 a.m. start time. No Jameson Williams. We know that much because he's suspended for gambling, so there's no way that he can play.
Mm-hmm.
How you feeling?
I also think that they're going to have a little bit of a trouble of potentially getting Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, one of their bigger signings of the offseason. I think he had a bit of a major injury here through the preseason. He might be a bit dicey when it comes to that as well. We'll see if he fits up on the timeline there. Amon St. Brown, ankle injury. He's practicing Tuesday, so he's already got a little bit of an ankle thing that he's dealing with. Not that they're over and bad as far as injuries go, but they got a couple of guys. They already lost Akawara, was put on the injured. Julian Akawara was put on the injured reserve for them as well. I think you touched on the biggest part, though, of this, Brendan, which is the Jameson Williams. And that is that you have Amon St. Brown, and if you give that Lions team an over-the-top threat, somebody that can take the top of the defense off and make that a threat where they can't just concentrate down on the short routes, that the Lions will try to lean into as they just try to slowly move the ball up the field. This team led the NFL last year in third down conversions and the least amount of 3-and-outs in the entire football. So it's a team about just earning their way up the football field in the way that they're going to try to get it done. But I think that that's the part where I come to this saying we have that advantage if there's no Williams in it, and you don't have to worry much about the stuff there. And already with Jared Goff, he's not exactly a maven when it comes to throwing the ball deep and being accurate and good in those kind of throws. I think you can kind of press down on that offense a little bit. I expect it to be a little bit close to what we had last year, being that you're going to get probably a little bit of an offensive fire output going on both sides of the ball. I would expect it to be a close game here. But I think that Williams loss is just enough for us to get over kind of the top with it when it stands. I think their defense is not quite, it hasn't taken enough steps defensively to get better. I think we have. And that feels like more of a difference. We beat them last year with what we had. We're even better this year. Then I don't know if they're significantly better. They move on from a DeAndre Swift and then they add a Gibbs on the other side. It just kind of feels like in some of their moves this offseason, it's been a little bit of, -1, +1, -1, +1.
I will say this. They were a much better team in the second half of the year than the first half of the year, which is when we played them. We see that's fool's gold sometimes. The team that ends the season strong and you assume it's going to carry over into the next season, it often does not. So I'm not saying that necessarily means anything. Yeah. But I am aware of the fact that they were a better team in the second half. But this should be a shootout. It's in a dome. It's going to be, weather will not be a concern. This should be maybe not quite like last year's game in Detroit, but it should be kind of like that, where both teams are just scoring a lot. And if they don't have Jameson Williams, you would think they would struggle to keep up. That's going to be a big part of their offense this year. And I think I'm going to stick to where I was before, which is this is a close game. This could go either way, but I'm feeling like that Jameson Williams loss is significant. And I'm going to say good chance we get Adams back, good chance we get Witherspoon back by this point. And if all that happens, then I think that we're going to take care of it.
Sure hope you can get Witherspoon back to deal with Amon in the slot. That would be really nice to have. And to your point on the ending of the season last year, let me just read you the teams here with the Lions. So they did indeed go 5-1 down the stretch, Brendan. They got Jacksonville, which was an impressive win at home. They then beat the Vikings at home. They then went on the road to the Jets and won that game, lost against Carolina Panthers at home at Carolina, and then won against the Bears at home, and then Green Bay on that final game of the season, which was certainly impressive enough. But it wasn't exactly a murderer's row of stacked opponents against them at the end of the season last year. And I do think they're coming together. This is a good team. This is a team that I think is probably going to win that division. So I don't want to seem like I'm underselling the Lions and what I think they're going to do this year. I just don't think they've quite taken as big a steps forward as I expect us to take steps forward this year. And we played with the fact that we could play with them step for step last year, being in that rebuild mode, just kind of makes me feel confident about this one.
Yeah, I feel pretty good about it. I'm sure it's going to be a close game. It might be one of those games where whoever has the ball last wins. Might be one of those deals.
Yeah.
But I'm feeling pretty okay about it right now. I'm feeling pretty okay about it. I think we got a slightly better quarterback. I think we got slightly better weapons with no Jameson Williams. I think we just do what they do a little bit better than what they do, if that makes sense.
Oh, yeah, agreed. I think it will be a close game, but it will come down to that. You're just a little bit of a better football team right now.
Okay, week 3, we are at home once again, welcoming number 1 overall pick Bryce Young and the Carolina Panthers. So this Panthers team kind of had to gut themselves a little bit to move up to take Bryce Young, lost their best receiver, lost some picks that could have been used on depth. And the preseason indicated that, well, it's a good thing that Bryce Young is used to getting hit a lot because he's going to get hit a lot.
Mm-hmm.
But what are you thinking here?
Yeah, this is a game that would have me concerned when the schedule first came out, certainly because this team took us to task last year at home with Sam Darnold at quarterback. And so you go, well, Wilson's at quarterback. Now this should be even a tougher tale. But indeed, they didn't look particularly good this preseason. And a little bit at the forefront, as you mentioned, was the struggles in pass protection. Ike Ekwamu, the number 1 pick that they had last year, really had some bad moments in preseason. And this was a guy that you were getting who was like the most talented of those 3 tackles that was taken, including our Charles Cross. But he was also the guy that you weren't as sure, like he had the biggest bust rate to him. Is he going to reach that upside? And he's really good in the run, but his issues as far as in pass protection go do remain and are a part of his game as well. I do think that this is still going to take them some time to get this thing kind of turned around, and they're going to probably have to fix up some things in that offensive line. It's built to run block. You got a guy, though, in Bryce that's going to want to be in shotgun a lot and then run a lot of kind of spread concept formation stuff like you would with Kyler Murray to get the most out of his arm. That doesn't go well together necessarily with run game centric stuff, right? Sam Darnold was doing a lot more of the under center stuff for them last year when they were running it. So I do look at it from a stylistic standpoint here, Brendan, going, I don't know if they're going to have the identity by that point to take you on and beat you. And it's not the same as last year as them kind of knowing what they were with Wilkes there and Darnold staying within himself at that time completely, right? He was in full on Jameis Winston, New Orleans Saints kind of mode at the quarterback position, right? Just stay safe. Don't make a move. Don't make a mistake. Don't make a mistake. Don't make a mistake. So I just don't think you're dealing with those same parameters this year. And I think Bryce Young is going to have his rookie moments through the first couple of weeks of the season. I don't think he's just lighting the world on fire from day one here. He'll have some good moments, but I watched him in the preseason and he certainly had some moments there too, where he's like, this is a lot right now.
Yeah, I think it's important to remember the parameters of last year's Carolina game. Because when Carolina had the ball, almost all they did was run it. They just eventually kind of realized that we can't do anything to stop it. And they just kind of kept running it at a certain point. I think there was one stretch where they ran the same play like 5 times in a row, and every time it worked perfectly. I'm not saying our run defense will be good this year, but I know it will be better than last season's because it has to be pretty much just by definition. It was so bad last year. So over the course of a football game, I think it's really hard in the modern NFL for a run defense to cost you games unless it's atrocious like ours was last year. So maybe our run defense this year will be bad, but I think it's okay to have a bad run defense in the modern NFL. It's just not okay to be like, you can be bottom 10, but you can't be bottom 3, bottom 4. So you have that. And then on the other side of the ball, that was the game we had no running backs. We basically hit the field knowing we were just going to have to pass the ball pretty much every play because we did not have a real running back. And we did. And Gino threw a lot of interceptions because, I mean, he was in a situation where he's like, okay, I got to score every time I get the ball. So I'm going to have to push it. and I have no running game, and the other team knows that, but there's nothing I can do about that. I just got to keep throwing and hope it works. So there were some extenuating circumstances in that game.
Agreed. And I just don't think you're bringing it the same way. Everything you said about the run game, I'm right along in alignment with you. I don't expect it to be a strength of this team, but do I expect there to be games like Carolina or the Raiders game last year where they're just running the ball over and over and over and over again? And like you said as well, almost just the same play they're running it with. I don't think that that's going to happen to this defense this year. Not to say they're going to be good stopping the run. They'll have their bad moments, but they'll be able to kind of batten down the hatches and tighten things up when the time calls for it and force teams to at least be a little bit balanced if they're going to beat them offensively in that fashion, unlike they had to be in that game, the Panthers with Donald, who they could kind of protect a little bit.
Right. All right. So I'm seeing a win here as well. I don't think it's going to be super close. I don't think it's going to be a blowout, just somewhere in the middle, just regular, typical NFL game.
8-point win, something like that. 5 to 8 point win, something in that nature, a little more than a touchdown.
Let's see here. Save the Geese. Thank you for the $4.99. Can't wait for this season and for college football. Going to be looking at these quarterbacks during the draft process. Yeah, you're not alone.
We're going to be going deep into Save the Geese, and it's been doing this for a few years now. There's been never this many quarterbacks that are this worthy of taking a look at, and part of it's just it's a deep class of quarterbacks. Part of it's that NIL situation where you had quarterbacks going back to school who maybe would have in prior years gone out and come out a little bit earlier to go and get their contract started up at the NFL level. But whatever the reason is, the quarterbacks are going to be tremendous in this class. And there is easily, 20, 25 guys we could probably come up with as far as names of guys that potentially could be draftable. And that is insane number when normally you're talking 10 maybe as a list of guys. The more than that will be drafted every year, Brennan, but 10 guys you're like, okay, these are like 10 kind of legit guys at least.
Yeah. I guess we just got to add Sanders to the list now too. So I had 15, so now it's 16. And then you're going to have some other guys like there's this one guy, I think his name is like Zeno or something. He has some really cool name, like Zeno or Zexo for UAB, who looks really good. So we're going to add more guys. And I mean, except for guys like Tyler Van Dyke or Grayson McCall, I don't see anybody going off the list.
No, I don't either. And you're right. There's always going to be more added in. There's Mississippi State kid. I'm sure he's not on your list. That's a potential guy in there too. There's a few.
Yeah. Okay. So week 4, we go on the road again. Monday Night Football, one of our primetime games this year, playing the New York Giants in New Jersey, not New York.
Jersey.
So this Giants team made big strides last year, trying to make bigger strides this year. How do you feel about this game?
I'm a little dodgy on this one, my man. I know that we handled business with them at home last year, but this is a game that worries me with how New York has kind of built themselves up. They've got a tight end now there, I think, in Waller. They didn't have that against us last year to really attack us with a bit. And that's going to be proven hard. I've loved some of the moves they've made. They made both that trade for Simmons, and they had another move they made recently where they traded for somebody. Help me out, man. What was the guy that they just made a move for as well?
Oh, Isaiah.
Yeah, there was one more. They did another move in addition, and I'm spacing it out right now, but I think they did another move in addition to that. So I like where they've been going with it, and I look at this as you're on the road. You've started out 3-0. Does the team kind of have a slack point here a little bit where the line goes a little bit loosened here as you go on the road into a primetime game? Carroll does so well with the primetime games in Seattle and getting them to play up, but I've been leaning to New York on this one, I guess is what I'll say. And I don't have as much a real, like, they're going to do this against us. They can run the ball well enough to us against us to be a problem. That was one game last year. We did a really good job against Saquon, knowing you got to stop this point of their offense. And they did it last year, but they do have that potential to get after your run game inefficiencies and really go after that, which then makes the position of quarterback easier to play for Daniel Jones if they can get you into that mode a little bit. So there's a part of me that's leaning into saying this is the first loss of the year. I don't feel strongly one way or the other on it, but in the name of being fairness, let's call it an L, because I don't know if they can quite get to 4-0 out to start this year.
I think I agree. I think I'm going to have to agree with that. This Giants team is well coached. I think they're going to have a pretty good defense this year. I think they're going to be able to throw some stuff at us that these first 3 teams we play won't. I think that as much as we give junk to Daniel Jones for being overpaid and not being an elite quarterback, there are some things that he is really good at. He's actually one of the better dual threat quarterbacks in the league. He sneaks up on you. You look up at the scoreboard at the end of the game, and he's got like 83 rushing yards, and it doesn't really make sense how he got there, but he got there. And he doesn't turn the ball over very much ever since he got
Dable.
Dable. Yeah, Dable's done great work with him. So that's going to really shorten the game for them, I think. And going on the road in prime time, I think the Giants are going to get us. I feel like they're going to take care of it.
Yeah, I do too. It's the Giants have a good defensive line to hold up against the run against you. That blitz. The two keys on that game for us are going to be, how does Geno deal with the blitz of Martindale? And does he make him pay the price when Martindale sends those full house blitzes and really hit him like he did last year at times, like that Tyler Lockett sluggo route that he hit him on. And he had a couple times in that game where Waldron made some calls at the right moment to really hit that defense at the right time. And then if you can stop Saquon, and you're right about Daniel Jones, he's a guy that Daboll manufactures a lot of stuff for him at the quarterback position. They run that Cam Newton Panthers offense like thing at times, right? Where it's just read option, one look, get it out of the hands. But that can be, as it's worked with Jalen Hurts and as it's worked with Lamar Jackson, this, like you said, this, you can still be a productive quarterback within that. You're fitting within the confines. You can't go out there and do all the things all the quarterbacks can do throughout the sport, but you can still be effective within that. And I do think this will probably be just the spot where there's a little bit of that slack on the rope after starting out the 3-0 on the road. You get your first L.
Yeah, I agree. Garth Knight, thank you for the $4.99. Killer Bees, if the Hawks win the big one this year, can we get a jacuzzi stream with French champagne and incredible hors d'oeuvres? I mean, we're going to have to do something. I don't know about that, but we're going to have to do something.
We'll find a compromise, Garth, somewhere between that and something else. And Brennan's point on that. We'll find a happy middle ground. But yes, we will be absolutely celebrating if they can pull that off this year.
Have you ever smoked a cigar? We could smoke cigars on stream. Some people like to do that.
I'm down to do a cigar for sure, man. I'll do it.
Yeah, I mean, it would be my first ever. So, I mean, that people like watching stuff like that. So maybe it'll be something like that. I don't know. But we got to win the Super Bowl first. So I'm not even tripping on that right now.
Yeah, got to get the hard part done. That's the easy part in deciding how to celebrate it.
Right. Okay. Then we got a bye week, which is very early for a bye week.
Mm-hmm.
But depending on how some of this stuff goes with some of the returning injured players like Adams, like Witherspoon, it might not be the worst thing if they like slowly acclimate themselves to NFL action over the next over the first few weeks back. Like, we know they're going to miss game 1. Maybe they slowly get back into practice week 2, week 3, week 4. Then maybe having a bye week at that point is not the worst thing.
I think you're right on this, but let's take this further. I think that right now, the plan, if you look at what they're doing with Jamal, is probably for him to come back after the bye at this point, in my opinion.
Then why don't they put him on IR?
Because they're going to track and see if he gets a little bit better faster, maybe at that point. IR is a 4-week process anyway. So it's also kind of like, 4 weeks, can we just maintain the roster spot while it's on, or just put him on the thing? And if he get better, if he does bounce back in that time, to have the flexibility to put him on the field inside that time, let's do it. But this will be the general plan they'd have in place to get him that one last, 5 extra weeks of basically rest. I think that you will see Witherspoon back faster. I think they'll try to get him back by game 2, but I bet right now, my bet man money on this would be Adams is a 3 to 4 game guy right now. And with it being 4, with that bye being there, maybe that's just enough to draw on Brendan and saying, give it the extra week, and then we'll have him for the back run of the schedule.
All right. So that gets us to week 6, our 5th game. This is maybe going to be the toughest game of the year. On the road, we're going to Ohio, 10 in the morning. It's not a great field, if we're being honest. No shade to the good people of Cincinnati, but your field is not the best.
Shade him, Brendan. Shade him.
It's the Cincinnati Bengals with Joe Burrow apparently ready to play. He's ready to play week 1, so I don't see why he wouldn't be playing week 6.
Yeah.
Some of the best receivers in football. Joe Mixon is back. Done some interesting things on that defense. It's a good team. So how you feel?
It's a tough game, 10 a.m. in the morning, too, on top of it, having to deal with it. I feel like this is a game that it's nice you're getting the week by to prepare for them. And the fact that they can't necessarily run the ball as well, even with Mixon there in recent years, they've been very much a pass-heavy team that just kind of – they're like Kansas City. They show you the run just to kind of show it to you. They're not really committed to doing it. So there's a part of me that looks at this game, Brendan, and goes, well, stylistically, you're building the secondary up stronger. If you have an Adams back by this point, you have kind of the secondary then theoretically to deal with this receiving unit in order to counter it. But then I do come back to the fact Bengals have been so good over the last couple of years, 10 a.m. game, and I got to mark it as an L, unfortunately, on this one.
Yeah. Burrow is my MVP pick right now.
Oh, that's a good pick, man.
Yeah.
It's a good pick. He's to me when I look at the two best, I think that there's a class of two of the best quarterbacks in this sport, and I think that they're above everybody else. I think that's Mahomes, and I think that's Burrow. I think that there's 3, 4, 5, 6 below them, but I think that they're in a different class. Those guys that are below in that next area, maybe not a far class below, but it's a different class. These are guys to me, Brennan, that can go out there and almost win the game on their own. They don't need an offensive line sometimes. They don't even need the best play. Like in Mahomes' case, doesn't sometimes even need the best playmakers out there. But they get the done. They are true superstars for the position. And it's hard to bet against those guys, especially a guy like Burrow, who just seems to keep getting better and better and better at this point as he's gone along. So your pick's good. That defense is really underrated. They went back and signed some guys here recently. They've actually been able to retain some of the talent in there, defensively speaking. So it's not just been, remember, that's the old Bengal way. They used to be where just never going to sign any of their guys. Everybody else always got pilfered to other teams. They've stopped doing that a little bit, and it's going to be to their benefit. I think they're going to be another strong season from the Bengals and a team in contention for that number 1 bye in the AFC.
Yeah. You know who their backup QB is, by the way, in case we do end up not getting Burrow. It's Jake Browning.
Ooh, interesting. That'd be crazy playing Jake Browning at 10 a.m. We're winning that game.
Somehow still hasn't become a coach in this league yet. I thought for sure by now he'd be a coach.
Those backups, they can bang around for years, man.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so that gets us to 3-2 going into a home game, week 7, October 22nd. We are loading up. We are going down to the bakery and getting another cupcake, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yum,
we
yum,
got the
yum.
Arizona Cardinals. We don't
I'll
know who
take
their
2.
quarterback is. Yeah. I mean, this one might count for 2 because this is, I think it would be fair to call them a bigger layup than the Rams. We don't know who their quarterback is. They basically gave away 2 of their better players from last year in Simmons and Jones. I don't know what else you can really say about them. I guess they got some decent pieces on that offensive line now. Their tackle tandem is all right. The receivers are okay, but they got no quarterback to get it to them. Their defense has been gutted. They lost their 2 best players from last year. The only guy on that defense left that's really like noticeably good is Budda Baker. I mean, what can you say about this Cardinals team other than that they are trying to beat the Rams at their own game?
Truly a team that is as hard in tanking mode as any team in the National Football League that I have seen, maybe since that Browns team that went 0 and whatever, 0-7, 16, 0-17. I mean, they've leaned into it fully here, and they indicated last week with the 3 trades that they made, Simmons and Josh Jones, and they had another guy that they moved in addition, some third guy, I can't remember.
Oh no, they acquired the quarterback, Josh Dobbs.
Acquired the quarterback for some weird reason.
Yeah.
Did you see the Coach Gannon meeting with his players in that film?
I did see that a little bit, yeah.
Watch it again just fully. I'm gonna put a video together with that and his whole thing with first meeting him with the shots thing. Shots. I'm gonna put them together and put it up on the channel for a video. But he doesn't, the one thing you could say with this, well, maybe they got a wild card coach like a McVay, who's just really like, they brought somebody in who's super smart, and this is the guy who's the opposite of that. And everything that he's showing you as far as just the general feelings of coaches and what you get from this guy. If this guy's a success, I will be highly surprised with that type of personality resonating with the youth that's out there in this league right now. So they're in tank mode, Brennan. They have shown their hand well. It's not even like, well, they're subtly doing it. The Rams, you could say maybe are somewhat, not even them, they're subtly doing it. This team's just overtly fully tanking. We should win this game and win it by 3 touchdowns. I mean, our backups are probably better than their starters.
Who do you think starts a quarterback for them?
Probably Dobbs, because from their standpoint, they're going to shut down Murray for the season at this point. I'd have almost no doubts about it. And you can, answering this question, Brendan, I normally answer it to say, who's the best quarterback of the 2 that are there? But can you fully say that this is not going to be a team that might just very well choose the worst quarterback to go out there and get it done if they are going into this tank mode?
Yeah, I mean, they traded for Dobbs, right? That indicates they wanted him. Do you trade
Mhm.
him and then say, "Oh, we don't actually want you. We just traded for you because we felt like it"? Like, I think you're probably right, but I'd rather see Clayton Tune, honestly. I think that's more interesting.
I agree. I mean, and Tune's a guy back end as they get on the draft. So you're talking seventh rounder, and neither of those guys is going to be the answer for them into the future. But they are. It's funny here is that they're fighting with the Rams. You have both of these two teams that have more strongly indicated a willingness to go into this tank mode than teams do in the NFL. And it's kind of like who can out tank who? Like can the Rams move a Darnold midseason? Can the Rams move a Stafford midseason if there's a team that needs a quarterback all of a sudden? It'll be funny to see if we get to this point. Like, do you think even the Cardinals will have Buda Baker by this point? Do
I
you
mean,
think
they
he's gonna?
shouldn't. If they
Yeah,
do, it's probably because they literally couldn't give him away.
oh, that's right. That's right. Or they just don't want to eat the dead money and they want to roll over all that cap space, So they're just like, well, we don't eat the dead cap that it would hit. But
I mean, if I'm Buddha, I'm saying keep your money. I just want to get out of here at this point.
yeah, I'll give you a couple million back if you just let me go. Just let me go. You can have money back. You can have money back. Just let me go.
I mean, he played on those Husky teams that were really good. I think he played on the team that made the playoff that one year and played Alabama. So he's used to some level of success, right? And being on this team that will struggle to win a game this year, it's can't be fun.
They were doing the prime follow the team thing that they do, that whole like hard knocks for the season thing. And they did last year for the Cardinals. And he had a couple moments where he's just trying passionately like a warrior in front of his teammates to get them amped up and into the thing. And you could just feel that he wasn't, it just didn't have the dogs in the room to get it done. And I feel for him that like you do with it, where, yeah, it's a guy who wants to go out there and compete. And he's just watching his career kind of wind through on this team that's not going anywhere anytime soon.
Garth Knight, thank you for the $4.99 again. What are the terrible fields in the NFL? I hear MetLife and FedEx. Never heard about Cincy, but I guess any turf field. Yeah, I mean, MetLife and FedEx are the most well known. The Field of Jeans in Santa Clara is pretty bad, I think.
Cardinals is bad too. Like even though it's
Mhm.
grass, I mean, how many issues have happened on that thing?
Yeah, it's
You
weird
know,
that this is still a problem. This should be something that doesn't happen anymore
I
in the
agree.
modern.
I don't get it as well either, Brendan. And it's like you'd think science of this stuff would come along to where that it would almost be self-managing with the grass that they can only use some third generation built in a lab grass that can handle it. You'd think they'd be unveiling this stuff, It was like, no, it's just Kentucky bluegrass. That's just what we use. But there's nothing extra on it. No, I just add. But yeah, that sounds right. MetLife is definitely known for being pretty putrid. Washington is obviously that's FedEx, right? Washington.
Yeah,
Um,
where was the Super Bowl played last year or this year technically?
wasn't it AZ?
I think it was because remember all the Eagles had a lot to say about that field. They didn't like it
No.
at all. Yeah.
Yeah, it sucks. It's we've had a lot of guys. Sherman tore his Achilles on that field. Rashad Penny tore his ACL on that field. We've had it's been a bit of a nightmare place for us from that standpoint. I can't think of any other places though that stand out to me as anybody else has got to
Oh,
meet the
Soldier Field, Soldier Field.
Soldier Field's been bad. Yeah. Yeah, that one's bad.
That's because it's so old. I think that one's kind of a
Well, and it's another place where it's like get the damn dome in the place, right? On the next stadium, like get the dome. Like we gotta be outside because these monsters of Midway. It's just like the field gets hard. And I remember Carlson. We had a John Carlson back in the day in a playoff game. Field was frozen in a playoff game, and he went up for a catch and came down. His head hit the ice, and he was done. It's just like you barely tap
yeah.
that ice field. That's just pure concrete is how it feels.
And what are the monsters of the Midway? The Bears have been terrible since I've been
I
born.
know.
They've
I
been
know.
a terrible team for almost 40 years now.
Yeah. Well, this is my problem with the Bills too, right? I have the same issue with the Bills. We're like, well, the Bills have this new next stadium that they're going to go build, right? Build it indoors. You
Yep.
guys, you've had to have games shut down. You have this incredible weather that just goes over the top there. It's not to necessarily, if it's been to your benefit, where's the evidence of it? Oh, 1990 Bills? You can go back to 1990, it comes to a point. It's just like, if it ain't working for you, ain't working for you. I've kind of felt this way at times with the Mariner Stadium, with the fence being so far back and the way the ball doesn't carry in that stadium and how hard it is for some hitters to get out of their head in that stadium because you can see them just get themselves stuck in a loop where they don't know what to do in there. Ball I normally hit would go for a home run. It's not going, it's dying out there, not even in front of the warning track. But that's another conversation for another time.
Right. Okay, so I think we both got a win against the Cardinals at home. Better
Big
be.
dub. Big dub.
Yeah.
Better be.
Yeah. And next week we stay at home and we have an interesting one. I don't know what to make of this team. They got to be better than last year, but are they going to be good? They got their quarterback back for the whole season. They've got their only good coach that they've had since they came back into the NFL. So some things are happening, but are the Cleveland Browns going to pose a threat to your Seattle Seahawks?
There's also the throwback jersey game, of course, too,
Yeah.
right?
Mhm.
And I like the fact you're playing this at home versus on the road at 10 a.m. I share your thoughts on Cleveland being one of those kind of few teams. Most teams I can get a pretty good read on what we're going to probably expect from them this year. I
Mhm.
would put Cleveland in that category, like you mentioned, of not exactly sure of what we're going to get from them. There's some really good, there are some good parts. There is no denying, though, that Jacoby Brissett outplayed Deshaun Watson last year. Now, maybe
Yeah.
Deshaun was just rusty and finding his feet back underneath him, but he didn't play well. And that's the part to me where I go, I don't know if we're going to see the best version of Deshaun, the Houston Texan Deshaun, out there in Cleveland now. For just maybe the reality of what we're looking at here. We'll see. Cleveland's a good team, Brennan. They got a good offensive line. They've done a good job of building that offensive line the way that they have. They've gotten the more skill position players, but that was really a weak spot for them for a couple of years was they didn't have receivers, and they've got some guy Donovan Peoples, Amari Cooper. They've taken some steps there. Defensively, Garrett's a game wrecker. Denzel Ward's a shutdown corner out on the outside. A couple of interesting defenders. They also added Za'Darius Smith, and that's where they could give you a problem in this game where their edge rushers are kind of taking your passing offense apart. And then the Browns are able to run the ball with Chubb on the other side and control the ball at home. And you see one of those games where defense is getting bled slow. Deshaun's beating him off of play action and using his legs. And then them defensively are able to kind of put the grips onto you in that fashion with what they're bringing. I still come back to saying, though, you're wearing the 80s jerseys, man. There's going to be that feeling, the players are going to be looking good, feeling good, playing good. I see this as a 3-point win. It'll be a tight one. I think it's going to be a low scoring game. But I do see this as being one that you come out like 2017 on 23-20.
Yeah, I think we get it done against the Browns. It's at
Yeah.
home. You're wearing the jerseys. I don't know if anything about that Browns is going to be stand out great. I think they got some things that are going to be okay. It might be a jack of all trades, master of none team. I don't know. Maybe something like that.
Yeah.
I'm going to say we get it done. I like this one. I feel pretty good about this Browns game. So just to check in real quick, that puts us at 5-2.
Mm-hmm.
All right. And then we swing into November. We've got our first November game, week 9, 10 a.m. on the road across the country, going to Baltimore to play the Ravens. Lamar Jackson's got his new contract, so he definitely won't be sitting this game out with a fake injury.
That's
Maybe a
right.
real injury, but not a fake one.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Uh-huh.
Might be
They
broken by
got
that point.
they got a bunch of receivers for him. They got Zay Flowers. They got Odell Beckham. What? How you feeling about this one?
Um, I think that this is probably going to be a loss for us. I'm not thinking that the Ravens are necessarily going to be the class of the AFC. I think they do get in the playoffs probably at the AFC. I like what they've done defensively. Roquan Smith trade last year midseason was the one that they made. They gave up a good amount of capital to get him, but he was a guy the second he got there that he sort of settled down defensively what was going on with them that wasn't really working. And they've got some edge guys that they've been stacking up there in recent years through the draft and building through it slowly in that. And they add a guy like Jadeveon Clowney as sort of their third, fourth edge here at the end of training camp. And so I like how they're starting to sort of put this defense together to go with what they have offensively. I think the key on this game is going to be whether or not, and it's the key for to me, the Ravens throughout the course this year, is they're changing offenses and they're going to try to have, Lamar become this, traditional kind of guy a little bit. He'll still use his legs and stuff, but they're going to have him do more traditional things. And as we saw with a guy like Russell trying to make that transition, it's not always a smooth and easy one going from a guy playing the position, your own particular style, to now having to fit it within the confines of a particular offense. You mentioned the receivers they did add, though. Odell, Zay Flowers there. They've still got Rashad Bateman, Devin Duvernay. So it's not like a star-driven group, but it should be at least a solid group. And Andrews is one of the better tight ends in the league. So, he provides a threat there. But it does feel like this being a 10 a.m. game right in the middle of the year, bodies are going to be tired by this point. I just think that that's a tough place to go win on the road at a 10 a.m. game with that team you're playing this year. I got to put it as an L, unfortunately. Not happily so, but can't get there to a
think
double.
I think this is the game we steal. I think this is going to be a game that we're going to be underdogs in, obviously. People won't be giving us that much of a chance, but I feel like this is the game we go in and we can take advantage of some stuff. I think this is a game. So this is the first time I think I'm going to have to deviate a little bit from you. I think this is the first time I'm going to say, you know what? I think we go into Baltimore, and after the game, everybody's talking about us as a Super Bowl contender.
Let's go. I love it, man. I love it.
Yeah. I think that obviously you worry about their running game against our run defense, but I think in that particular matchup, you're able to focus a little bit more on just taking away the run.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that it's not going to be as big of a deal in a game like that. And I don't know. I don't feel like that defense is going to be elite the way that it often has been in recent years. So I feel like there's going to be some stuff you can take advantage of there. I don't know. I feel good about that one.
I think it's a fair point. It's certainly not the Ray Lewis defenses of old that you're dealing with right now, and they're trying to bring it together, and they've taken steps. You can see the plan in place with them, but the plan's not really yet been fully realized as far as them defensively goes. Points against, they were 29th last year, 24.7. So they gave up their share of points within that. It was a little bit of the tail though between the as far as that Roquan Smith, him coming in there and really showing you what a good middle linebacker can do for a defense. But David Ajabo, another guy, remember they lost him all last year he had the Achilles injury, was basically costing him that whole year. So he's coming back into the frame there. They've got some interesting. They got the other kid, remember too, the kid they lost all last year as well. Travis Jones. So they've got Travis Jones coming back in, and he's backing up Michael Pierce there as the number 2 at the nose tackle there. So they're kind of the opposite of our situation in nose tackle. they're in a pretty good place with their noses. So that's why I'm kind of, some of this from when my outlook on this, Brendan, is a little bit of me projecting here for those old guys, and I don't have as much tangibly to go off of that. I'm like well, I see the plan that they're putting in place and how it could work, but you're absolutely right. There are holes here. I mean, the cornerback room isn't the strongest. The safety room isn't the strongest. Kyle Hamilton proved to be pretty good for Notre Dame for them. He's a good player for them, but there's some holes. There's some spots you can go at.
All right. We come back home the next week, and maybe for the last year they will be called this. We're playing the Commanders, a team with more questions than any other team at quarterback besides maybe Arizona. Mm-hmm. Apparently they are going with Sam Howell, which is, I think it's the right move. Let's see what's up with them. But it's a team that has some other positive qualities. They got Terry McLaurin on that offense. They got a really nice defensive line. They've invested a lot into that defense lately. So there's something there, but they're coming into Seattle week 10, 125 start time. What do you think?
I would have this as a win. The front four is the biggest problem you're dealing with Washington, of course. With if Chase Young can come back and become, realize on the promise that he showed out of Ohio State. You have Montez Sweat, LaRon Payne, and then Allen there as your fearsome foursome. So they don't have to blitz you. They can drop into heavy zones. They can bring the pressure on that. That's what's really going to determine whether you win or lose that game, probably above anything else. Washington does not have a lot offensively to really go after you with. Their backs are just okay to me. Robinson, Gibson, they're okay. Gibson's a little bit of a threat out of the backfield you got to worry about. Now, you mentioned McLaurin, and he's legitimately one of the better receivers, I think, in the league. Dotson on the other side's to me just kind of okay. He's more of your gadgety, get the ball in his hands. He's not really the pure receiver type. But I do think that this is a game because you get to play this at home. I mean, this is like one we'll talk about the Steelers later on that I like being able to play this at home. We had to play Washington on the road a couple of years ago, a team that was kind of similarly talented at that point where they were at. And they beat us in that game. That offense was able to kind of just go up and down the field on us throughout the course of that game. So I think this changes with it being at home. I think that gives you the advantage you need. That 3-point advantage, you win it by 4, win it by 5, but you're the better team.
Yeah, we can't lose to Sam Howell at home.
No.
If that happens, we got a big problem.
Agreed. Yeah, I think Sam Howell can be okay as a starting quarterback, but he's going to be limited. And I think that we can take advantage of those limitations, especially with that offense being kind of in general limited.
Right. Garth Knight, thank you for the $9.99 super chat. Don't think JSN is coming back so soon. I hurt my wrist in a way I described on Brando's channel a month back and worry for JSN without acknowledging the medical care of NFL teams versus my local walk-in. I mean, he's already out there catching passes. I would hope he's not doing that if he's still a long way away.
Yeah, I think that him getting out and catching passes is him sort of signaling to the coaches, I want to get on this field and I want to get on this field fast, Garth. If a player's want to take his time, he ain't going to be out there practicing. And they were those throws in practice, they were winging him in there. I mean, somebody was not going light on JSN. Like, be careful. He's got the red jersey on. We're trying to have this thing recover. It's like, no, I'm going to throw this in at 100 miles an hour. So he's out there doing it, Garth. I mean, he's rolling. I would expect him, if not back by week 1, he absolutely will be back by week 2 at this point.
Yeah, I'm inclined to agree. And hopefully that ends up being a good thing that he's back by week 2. But again, this is an area I feel like you can have a decent amount of trust in this team to do the right thing.
Agreed. And they just can't feel impelled by that Rams game. Just like, I'm sure with all these guys, just give them a week. Let's go one extra. We can get this done without that.
Next up, we play the Cupcakes yet again. We play the Los Angeles Cupcakes. By this point in the season, they might have shut it down. I mean, honestly, by the time you get to November 19th, I think Stafford will probably be out. He might retire by then, honestly. Like, yeah. I don't know why he came back. I think that's a terrible idea, by the way.
But no, he's just going to play 5 games and his back's going to start hurting again. He's going to be like, it's hurting. It's my back.
Yeah. So, Cup, who knows? But with the way this season is likely to go for them, there's no reason for them to risk him if there's any concern at all, right? Aaron Donald might have been traded by now.
Yeah.
So it might even be worse than the team that we are looking at going into the season. But we are going on the road. We are going into LA, a place where we needed a last-second touchdown to win last year. So what do you think?
Yeah, Rams are going to be even weaker than they probably will be in week 1, absent whether maybe not Cooper Kupp's there. And if he's not playing in week 1, if they still have everybody, then maybe they're a little stronger at that point, because it does look like Kupp, when he's talking about meeting with specialists right now, I would guess that probably means that within a game, a week out, he's not going to make that game. Nor why would he? Why would the Rams have Kupp play in this first game?
Exactly.
You're not going to win this year. Why would you push this guy out there to do that? No, we got this again. Should be a 3-touchdown win by this point. They're not going to provide much of any challenge to us this year.
Yeah, I mean, the thing that people need to remember with this Rams team is all the decent players they lost. I know they're getting back Kupp. I know they're getting back Donald, but think about losing Greg Gaines, losing A'Shawn Robinson, losing Allen Robinson, losing Taylor Rapp, losing Jalen Ramsey, who is better than decent. Like, the losses that they sustained to their mid-level of the roster was pretty crazy, and they made no effort to add any kind of like win now type players. I don't think they signed anybody of any note in free agency.
They had no money to spend. That's the price they paid for going, because remember, they went hard in on a couple of year period. It's, you go hard in on 1 year, there's going to be a little bit of bleeding down the line. You go hard in on 2 years, you're only then going to create a bigger bleed than it comes back in. And so now they're in the big bleed. That's what this year is basically on those 2 years, because they went as hard on the push the chips to the center of the table as any team in recent memory. With the first picks that they gave up, Brendan, with the amount of money that they sacrificed to future cap space for today, the price comes in and gets paid. The bills do. And luckily for us, we're going to get to feast on that. And that's a good thing for our Hawks, because this could help us potentially get down to looking at that number 1 bye off of these wins against the Rams and the Cardinals.
Yeah. Jeffrey A. Thistle, thank you for the $5. Look at Brando. Got his hair did all ready for new season. Like our odds if we stay healthy, which I don't think will happen.
I'm actually due for a haircut. So this is actually kind of long right now.
Yeah, I keep it short. I want a haircut that you can set your wristwatch to.
I've committed to doing that as soon as I start going bald. It's gonna be completely that when I go bald. But while I'm still got a little bit of the hair on top of the head, as I get older, I'll lean into it a little bit.
Yeah.
Thanks though, Jeffrey. Appreciate you.
Yeah, odds if we stay healthy, which I don't think will happen. I mean, injuries are going to be part of it, of course. You just hope that it's kind of like in 2013, the Seahawks had a lot of injuries, but most players got back in time for the playoffs. So that's all you can hope for.
It is all you can hope for. And Jeffrey, look, it is a thing that we've had enough seasons that have been clipped by it. Injuries can come up. 2020, you got in the playoffs, you lost to the Green Bay Packers, but you could make a very strong argument in that season that you just reached too far into a line of the injuries were just too much. Last year against the Niners, Brendan, did we have a healthy nose tackle for that playoff game? I don't think we did. And you do get to this place at times where this happens, and you got to hope that the injury luck works in your favor to a degree that you're not over it. I think what is nice, Brendan's point on this is one that should not be undersold, and that is that something that I think Carroll's gotten better with over the years, and he has a very different plan for how he treats injuries, I think, than other coaches, being a little bit more of a conservative nature and the taking of the time, and also sort of setting their situation up to have the roster theoretically trying to add the guys by the end of the year, even if it means giving them a little extra time to make that happen versus having them at the front of the year, as we're seeing with a couple of these guys and their patience to, activate and play them and get them rolling. So it'll be a part to monitor, Jeffrey. It could be something to sink you. One other part that gives me a little bit of optimism this year, though, in regards to this is the deepest football team that you've put together since going back to 2014 season. The depth is there to call upon to be able to still maintain and hold the line where you weren't able to do that in the last 5 or 6 years. You needed the frontline guys to do it. And if they didn't, you were SOL.
All right. Let's see here. Chad Hart, thank you for the $4.99. Seahawks 31, Bills 23. That's my bold prediction, Super Bowl 58.
Let's go.
Why you got to do the Bills like that, though? They've been through enough, man.
Not if it means that we get our Super Bowl win. If they've got to go through one more Super Bowl loss, I'm sorry, Bills Mafia. Mm-hmm. That's just a pain that you're going to have to take so I can enjoy myself. I won't feel the least bit bad, Brendan, and you better not either.
No, I of course not. I mean, it's sports, but can we do it to like a team like the Chiefs that won't even feel it that much? Like they'll get over it. Like, can we do it to, or the Chiefs are a former division rival. If you're old enough, you probably have a animosity towards the Chiefs anyway, so you wouldn't care if you did hurt them.
That's right. We're just going through our Super Bowl wins of all the former AFC West foes. So we'll eventually get around to the Chargers. We got the Broncos taken out. We'll have taken out the Chiefs, and then we just got to get the Chargers and the Raiders then down the road.
Quite a long time on the Raiders to get to the Super Bowl.
It might be a few decades and an ownership change on that one. Maybe they're back in Oakland by that point, Brendan.
Okay, so here's an interesting one. Here's a tough one right here. We're playing the San Francisco 49ers at home. Thanksgiving night game, another prime time one. Whole country watching. Is Bosa going to be there? Who's going to be playing at quarterback? What's going to be going on with this Niners team by week 12? Who knows? None of us really know the answer, but the only thing that really matters is, are we going to beat them or not?
Late game in the day, the 12s are going to be amped through their mind. They know the implications of this game, the rivalry of this game, everything at play and on the hook for this game coming up. Like you said, I think we don't know exactly of what we're going to see with the Niners. I still will predict them to be as winning this division, but I feel a lot less certain about that outlook right now, Brendan, than I did when we made that prediction when the schedule first came out. It's on shaky ground to me. Brock Purdy coming back on this injury 6 months after the surgery, and reading up a lot of these guys on Tommy John. You sometimes think you're back and it's 100% and it's not. One day it'll feel back at 100%. Next day you have like a dead arm, and it just takes a bit of time to really come back into it. Bosa, this is not going in a good direction. He's still not signed. There's reportedly a difference of $4 to $5 million between each side. That's a significant, that's per year, by the way.
Yeah, per year. That's not just the total value. That would be easy to get over.
Oh, absolutely. This is not. This is like, we're talking a 12% a year difference as far as the two sides go. And so even if he comes back, he still missed all of training camp. Will he be healthy to that team? This is not as deep a team Niner that we've seen in recent years. We could be seeing a different team than what we look at them right now, but let's just anticipate that they're going to be at, relatively full strength. I think Thanksgiving, our house, late night, all eyes of the nation upon our Seattle team, the team ready to go, propelled by our fans at home. We get this victory on a last-second drive by Geno Smith and a final field goal by Myers to give us a 2-point win to win it.
Yeah, I've come around on this one too. I think the Bosa stuff, I think the quarterback stuff, I think the vibes are just bad from this Niners team. Vibes are just not good. And I mean, the Bosa thing is no joke. If they have Bosa, I think that's a top 3 defense. With no Bosa, I think it's like top 12. It's still good. They got good linebackers. They got Armstead. They got a couple other guys who are, Hufanga. I think, yeah, it's Hufanga, right?
Hufanga, yep.
Yeah. But it's just kind of a mediocre defense, slightly above average. They lost their defensive coordinator, by the way. That may end up mattering.
Mm-hmm.
And offensively, I kind of feel the same way. It's an above average offense, top 12. Their
Yeah.
quarterback, who knows? Their offensive line's not good. We've already kind of determined that. They're going to get through by good coaching. I think they're still going to be able to run the ball pretty well. They've got good running backs. They still got Shanahan's schemes that is going to get them out of a lot of trouble. But if they don't get Bosa in there, I think that's just like a 9-win team, maybe 10 because of their division being kind of weak. But it's not a team that is radically better than us, and it's a team that I would expect to beat. So, by the way, that puts me on a 6-game winning streak right now.
Ooh, look out, Brennan. Brennan's going 15-2 here. I can't push back on anything you said. I don't know what we're going to get as far as that team goes. And if Bosa misses a collection of games, I think that definitely puts their outlook for more of a 9 to 10 win spot, even if he comes back, because I think we're going to be pushing them and we're going to be on their heels. And they need those early wins. I mean, they're going to Pittsburgh in that first game, Brendan. On the road in Pittsburgh, first opening game of the season for them. You know, if I'm not mistaken, I think it's a 10 a.m. game.
Yeah, 10-8. I think so.
I'm double checking here. 10 a.m. game to start the season. I mean, that's tough for West Coast teams in general if you're at your full strength. We know that. Hell, I've got a couple of our losses on the schedule you and I are talking about, with at least 1 or 2 here that are at the 10 a.m. spot. The Bengals game and the Ravens game. That's how much I do put the weight into it. And so, yeah, I think that they're in a place where they could be definitely falling back at this point. I'm not going to quite count on it because I do believe Shannon's solid and he might be able to just work around the Purdy limitations. But you are working around those limitations with this kid. And that's been one of the things been fun of the debates on my comments, my section, about whether this kid does have arm strength issues, does not have arm strength issues. It all comes down to this with the Niners to me on whether or not it's 3 kind of base stats on them last year. Number 1, 2.6 seconds. That's the average time that their quarterbacks got the ball out of their hands, which was the fastest in the NFL. Number 2, they were 32nd in air yards last season. 32nd in air yards. So they get the ball out of their hands fast and they throw very, very short. So that tells me that if I can force them into having to go opposite of that, I might have myself some success. And indeed, I do think you're going to find that success as soon as you can push them outside of those. No, the third thing was also Brendan, of course, his receivers had the most generated separation of any receiving core in all of the National Football League. You know, is he going to get all 3? Is Purdy going to get all 3 of those things working together for him again this year to work around those limitations? We'll see. It doesn't tend to be the case, though, that quarterbacks get to have all those things working for them year after year in that manner most of the time.
Kittle's already hurt, by the way.
Yeah.
Also, let's throw that in.
And he's always kind of usually got something that he's dealing with as an ailment that he's like Debo, where it's like every year there's something that keeps him out for 4 or 5 games.
Okay. Let's see here. Chase Stern, thank you for the $20 dono. Do you think we will get Buckner eventually? He's been one of my favorites for a while.
Colts are kind of hard-headed. Thank you for all these donations too, folks. Appreciate you guys on that.
Definitely.
Colts are striking me as hard-headed on this one, Brendan. The situation with Jonathan Taylor. It just feels like to me the owner's like, maybe we can compete this year. We'll get lightning in a bottle with this quarterback, but we need all of our guys to do that. We'll need Taylor here to do that. So let's make it look like we're going to trade him, but we're not really intending to trade him. Let's ask the Dolphins for Jalen Waddle. Like, give me a break. So, like, if they're going to be that unrealistic and unreasonable when it comes to this kind of situation, how can we expect them to be any more reasonable when it comes to a Buckner? I'd love to predict it's going to happen, but with the fact that he restructured already and the fact this Colts team doesn't seem to have bought into the fact that they're not ready to go, that they're not one of the cream of the crop in the AFC, I think it's going to be hard to pull him into the fray.
How many weeks in is the trade deadline?
6.
Okay, so I'm looking at the Colts schedule. They host Jacksonville week 1.
Loss.
Go to Houston week 2.
Win.
At Baltimore.
Loss.
Rams.
Win.
At home. Win. Titans. Don't know what that team's going to be.
Yeah, but even if you're 2-3, it's like that's the problem we had with this a couple of years ago that stood out to me is that the 17th game on the season, the trade deadline's in the same spot, but there's now an extra game on, which now gives these teams that are a 2-3, 3-2, even a 2-4 team, Brendan, can look at itself and say, well, if we just get hot, we can get ourselves into the playoffs, and then anything can happen at that point. We're not 1-5. We're not 0-4, 0-5. You know, that's where you have to get, I think, on these teams to get into sell mode now in this new era of the 17th game season, because teams want to think they have a chance. They think parity's right throughout the league. They're right that, the difference between the team at the top and team at the bottom, I think, is as close as any sport out there. And so that does give these teams, I think, a little bit of a false confidence that they can go out there and get it done because of that. I don't like seeing it. The Colts shouldn't. They should be doing a lot like what we're seeing from the Rams and the Cardinals here, which is leaning into the process, but they're not. And this is where we go top down. Bad ownership. This is why you harp on ownership, because this is where bad ownership can draw you and drive you into bad directions in proper places, which is only going to cause them to get cut in between and take longer for them to actually get to being a contending squad.
So David in the chat just said the trade deadline this year is Halloween, so they pushed it back, which
That's good.
I don't know if that's
Thank
new,
God.
but okay. So let's say they lose to the Titans.
Mm-hmm.
So for the sake of argument, they lose to the Titans, lose to the Jags. Then they have the Browns and the Saints. They lose both those games. They're probably 2-6. Does that motivate?
Let's double check something really quick here, dude, just to make sure we're right on one other aspect, because there's the smoking gun in this, which is, okay, well, what are they doing from a standpoint of the dead money aspect? I mean, are you just going to have to try
the Buckner contract has very little dead money. That's tolerable. They can live with that. The dead money on Quentin Nelson is a death blow, but
yeah.
I do know that.
One quick check. Just want to make sure on it. So DeForest Buckner, no, see, you're right. It's not bad. So he's a 17.25 cap hit. They've got to come up with an extra 2 million, 2.5 to move him out of pocket. So right now they're sitting on, let's make sure this can work. Right now they're sitting on 13 million. They could afford to do it. That'd take them down to $10 million in cap space for the season if they moved him at that point.
Yeah. You're going to need to really bowl them over, though, to get them to do that.
Agreed, because now they're like we did with the Russell thing. Part of why we got the returns we did for the Russell trade was, yes, they thought they were getting the player they were getting with Russell, but also because you were eating the $26 million. And so Denver had to throw you a little bit of the extra bit of here's a kicker here for you having to sustain that dead money cap hit, which is one of the biggest dead monies Indian has been ever sustained in NFL history. So yeah, you're probably getting more closer to the neighborhood of having to come to the table with a first or a second, third Darrell Taylor kind of combination. You're probably going to have to come up around that spot at that point, considering the extra money they got to come out of pocket at that point for him.
Yeah, I think I agree. But I mean, maybe CJ Stroud and Will Anderson will teach him a lesson week 2. We'll let Jim Irsay know what the score is, and maybe he'll change his philosophy.
We want them going 0-6. This is a one team to target to say going 0-6, because even if it's not DeForest Buckner, bam, we get the consolation prize, which would be Stewart. It may theoretically. I mean, we don't know if there's any interest from our team on this, but these would be guys I think John would be sort of circling as, let's keep an eye on here on this team. So lose, Colts. Please do lose.
Chase Stern, thank you for the $10 again. Double dono from Chase Stern. How do you think the Bosa situation ends? They already said they're not going to trade him, but are they really going to just let him sit at home?
This is such a tough situation for the Niners, and it shocks me that they didn't prepare themselves. The fan base didn't prepare themselves for this. I mean, if we were entering into this kind of negotiation with a player coming up, I would totally be worried about it and be like, we got to discuss this. They were all just non-flush by, it'll be fine. We'll get it done. No doubt about it. There's a significant difference between the two. We know that Bosa brothers, because of their father, are not going to simply cave and give in. Joey Bosa didn't give in. I don't expect Nick's going to give in. Do the Niners give in? Well, if they're not going to trade him, which is what they've said, the one thing with that, Brendan, is if they were going to trade him, would you expect them to say we plan on trading him? I mean, that doesn't help their compensation in any way by putting that out on the media, other than just to be honest and open with the media, which is not in general manager's best interest.
If I had to bet, I would say they eventually realize, wait a minute, this is the last chance for this core to win a Super Bowl. Give him whatever he wants, and we'll deal with it later. Like, that's how I feel like this ends. They just wake up one day and they're like, we are going to give away a real chance at the Super Bowl over $4 million a year. At that point, again, why even own a team if you're going to do that?
I would agree with you that this probably, if I have to be pushed to a way that this is going to go, that's probably where it goes. Because how can they not look at their situation and say we're nearing the end of the Super Bowl run, even if they're not like we're close to the end, we're nearing the end. Do we want to punt on one given year because we don't want to come up an extra 3 to 4 million a year for the best, maybe the best defensive player in all of football, or second or third best defensive player? And that you break it down to that kind of logically. No, you wouldn't. If you were in their scenario, you wouldn't. And that is where you would expect it to. But at the same time, I wouldn't have expected Brendan for them to allow this to get to us now being a week out and him still not being signed. I mean, it's going to have a tangible effect right now. He signs tomorrow. He's not going to be ready for a full amount of snaps against Pittsburgh. He may not be ready for week 2 or 3 to really be fully ready to roll 100% of the snaps at that point. I know he keeps himself in good shape, but that's where they're already kind of going to suffer this a little bit, you know?
Yeah, they asked John Lynch about that, and I don't know if he has CTE or something, but he was just like, "Oh, we're not worried about that at all. He keeps himself in great shape." I don't know about that John Lynch guy sometimes. He just kind of says stuff.
Hey, he's supposed to be a Stanford guy,
Yeah.
you know. I mean, but like you said, he did a lot of hammering guys head first back when you could spear him like you were a tip spear on it. And he's definitely got his share of blind spots, Brendan. He's not a bad general manager, but he's got his share of blind spots when it comes to certain things. And I think the DeForest Buckner situation can inform us a little bit here. This is why it makes it hard for you and me to make a prediction here, because that was one in retrospect that was turned by the fact that he was asking for too much money by their standpoint of things. And this is the same general manager in front office that's in place for these negotiations. Is DeForest a different player, but I mean, not vastly. He's one of the top probably 7 defensive tackles in the sport. And you said, nope, let's move him for this first round pick. So it makes it a little bit harder to predict here, but the bottom line you brought up is the bottom line. You're gonna kick out maybe what will be your final Super Bowl window year in an NFC this year that's wide open for you to take. I mean, the Eagles are in us, and maybe one other team you could find standing in your way. It's penny wise, pound foolish. Isn't that how they say that?
Something like that. But I mean, I just don't think you can do this after you already paid Debo, you paid McCaffrey, you paid Trent Williams, you paid Armstead. I think they paid Fred Warner too. It's like the decision's already been made.
Agreed. But again, surprising that we're even at this stage where you would have thought that they would have made their peace with Jesus on this one already weeks prior. Right. And the fact that they're still sitting there, you know, going, well, 4 million. It is great to see, though. I love watching it. I love watching this dysfunction.
Yeah, the Bosa family is bigger than I thought it was, by the way. I was doing research on this for a video about the Bosa situation the other day. So you've got Nick and Joey, of course. Their father is John Bosa, who played back in the 80s for the Dolphins for 3 years, short career. Their cousin is Jake Kumaro, who is actually a current wide receiver for the Bills.
Oh, okay.
Their grandfather is Palmer Pyle, who was a guard in the NFL for 6 years in the 60s.
That's a guard name.
Yeah. Their great uncle was Mike Pyle, who played center for the Bears in the 60s for almost the whole decade. And their uncle is Eric Kumaro, who played linebacker for the Dolphins for 3 years. That's like the first family of football almost.
Yeah, that's 3 generations, multiple times over. That's crazy. That's insane.
Let's see here. Garth Knight, thank you for the $4.99. Jim Irsay is the best. BTW, he's also mourning the loss of the lead singer of the Bay City Rollers 3 years back, so have a heart.
I bet he is.
Didn't he do the thing where he was trying to rescue the whale with like he had like a plane. He was gonna like fly the whale somewhere.
That sounds right. That sounds like Shamu or something like that. It was like he's always got something. He's buying like the Nirvana guitar. He's just a live wire, Jim Irsay is, you know. You don't know what he's gonna do next.
Yeah. I wonder how long before the NFL forces him to sell. It seems like it's coming.
I think with them, they're just like, he isn't gonna last another 7 years. Just wait him out.
Yeah, I'm really excited for Jim Irsay's son to take over. That's going to be great.
As we've learned with Al Davis, it only gets more colorful.
Dev Dog 31 with the big one. 49.
Let's go.
Dev Dog. Thank you, Dev. Given the hamstring injury, what do you guys expect from Spoon this season? I'm excited about him, but I feel like it's going to be a rough start to his career. Also, do you guys think his move to nickel came more from a need at nickel or depth on the outside? All right, so let's start with the first part of it because that's a real thing. Like, missing preseason and training camp is no joke for a rookie.
Mm-hmm. I think I do think at the head of this, it's certainly going to limit him to some degree this year. You're not going to get a guy that's going to go out there and have an impact like a Tariq Woolen did last year from Witherspoon's perspective. Now, that doesn't mean that he doesn't have something to offer throughout the course of this year and that he can't get better as the year goes along and he gets more of a feeling for how to play in the pros and all of that. I also think the physical nature of his game will transition well when he gets on the field because that part of the game is not going to be something he shies away from. So that's where I would stand on the first part of that question. If I can just really quickly on the second part, I truly believe that the move to nickel was a combination move. Number one, it was to get the most out of him in a rookie year as he's learning, putting him in the best position to succeed, Dev Dog, which is keeping him in man coverage situations. He's referenced when he was drafted what he's got to work on his zone coverage, which is what you're going to predominantly play on the outside. And so I think they look at it as the best way to get him on the field and put him in position to success. He's also a guy, like you asking your question, though, is better than what we have there in our other slot options to a degree, depending on what we get from Julian Love, which I just don't have enough to go off of with him in the slot to know if, and I don't have enough to go off with Witherspoon to know who's better. But I think that the team would like to, especially when you talk about initially being without maybe Adams for 3 or 4 weeks, having Love out there at strong safety and having Witherspoon when they were thinking about this process, then at slot was going to be ideal. Witherspoon eventually ends up on the outside, but I think they like Trey Brown. They like Jackson over there as well. They like the outside depth where it is less than they like where the starting slot was at prior to Witherspoon's arrival here, Dev Dog. So it's all of that kind of driving this a little bit to come to that decision. All of that. And that's why I've agreed with it is I think that there's actually some intelligence that was brought into this Witherspoon in the slot. It wasn't just like some fans try to tell you here, well, he failed now at outside corner, so they put him in a slot because he wasn't good enough out there. I don't think that's the case at all. I think it's the coach is trying to put the best 11 defenders on the football field at one time, which is what you want your coaching staff to do, in my opinion.
Yeah, I pretty much agree with all that. And I don't think it's something to be concerned about. I don't think it's something to be fearful about. Ideally, I think eventually this guy becomes an outside corner that slides inside on nickel downs. Like, I think Byron Murphy does that.
Yeah.
So I think that's where this goes. And I think that's great. He's on the field for pretty much every play at that point, and he's got the opportunity to make maximum contributions his rookie year.
Yeah. I think, and he'll have an effect, though he won't be the star power of Tariq Woolen. It's not to say he can't come in and have an effect and really make his presence felt in there on the nickel. So I think before this game, we're going to look at a collection of games from him, Brendan, 7 or 8 or 9 games in the season. Wow, he showed up in these games. He was really, you could feel why this team was drawn to him as the 5th overall pick. You'll understand a little bit more why, if you're in question of him. Some of you are all on board with him, but if you're in question of him, I think you'll be at the end of this season going, okay, I get a little bit closer. You may still love your Jalen Carter, but you think you'll at least get closer in your own mind of saying, but I can see the plan here with Witherspoon. I can see what they're trying to accomplish.
Let's see here. Garth Knight, thank you for the $4.99. Brendan, I might have to rest my ankle that I twisted in a competitive croquet game earlier this afternoon in New Zealand. Hopefully I can moderate. I used to have a croquet set long time ago.
Be careful, they're sharp.
Pretty good. Let's see here. Jeffrey Thistle, thank you for the $5. We go on an early run and stay healthy. How about we get a Bobby to recruit Aaron Donald as a depth piece in the middle for a Super Bowl run? You're kind of buying high on Aaron Donald in a way, aren't you? Like I could be wrong. I could be completely off base. I feel like Aaron Donald was a shell of his former self even when he was playing last year.
Really?
I mean, I don't, he wasn't bad, but I don't think he was anywhere close to the best interior defensive lineman in the league anymore. I think his pressure count on PFR was way down. His pressure rate was way down. And then he got hurt, and then he missed the whole rest of the season. I just feel like you're grabbing onto a ship just as it's about to crash. And also, if the Rams are willing to trade him to you, doesn't that say something about him that they're like, oh yeah, we'll trade him within the division, no problem. It reminds me of when the Eagles traded Donovan McNabb within the division. And as we later found out, it was because Andy Reid knew that this guy's no good anymore.
Yeah. No, I think that those are all valid points that you come from. I don't know if I'm as down necessarily on last season with the 12 games he played, 5 sacks, still a 90 overall PFF grade. I think the pressure numbers are certainly valid to bring that up and say those weren't quite as good. I think some of that you have to look at a little bit too as well, though, Brendan, with that of how much of that was necessarily as well that there was nobody else to concentrate on that defensive line when he was in there. How much of that was he doubled at maybe as high a rate as he's been in his entire career in that first 12 games because you knew that was the only guy you had to concentrate on that defensive line? There was no Von Miller. There was no Leonard Floyd that was coming off the edges really. Or maybe there was a Leonard Floyd. I think they did something with him at some point.
I think he got hurt, but he did play for a while.
Played for a while, but it was definitely as weak as that defensive line's been there maybe throughout as much of the time that Donald's been there. And still put up some pretty eye-opening stats. I mean, as far as versus what we had on our football club. This is a risk. And if you get down to it, if he's out there and he's producing at a 90 PFF rate, Brendan, and that's what I'm getting, that's what I could potentially bring on board here with them at that point. And that this team is looking great. And they're looking like, hey, we bring this guy in but this is just going to help to take us to another level. Aaron Donald's been the single most wrecking force that we've seen in the NFL is on the defensive side of the ball for the last 10 years. If he is a smidge below where he's been, that's still a damn good player. That's still a guy that's going to have a lot of positive effect on this defensive line. And so if you're talking about making a go for a move like that to bring on an Aaron Donald guy who's shown these guys feet back under him, and I think is going to be properly motivated on this team, I would make that move. And this is again informed by the fact that we have to look and remember, Brendan, on this. Where is the defensive line as far as the NFL wise and my ability to onboard guys into the future? Where's that at? Is there a clear road to adding a really talented defensive lineman here? If the Colts hold on to DeForest Buckner and say we're going forward, that road's closed. If Wilkins ends up signing with the Dolphins, that road's closed. Every other road's been closed up throughout the offseason as far as defensive linemen that you could trade for or sign as we go into the future. I mean, maybe a guy like Reeder next year with the Bengals, but I don't think we're going to have the money to sign him when he signs out on the open market. And I think with his Donald deal, you could probably find a way to work this in and get creative with the money to make it work if that was even a little bit of an inhibiting factor. But I would jump in all day if he's back to rolling and looking good. I would make that move. And last point on this, Brendan, why would they make that move? Because the Cardinals and the Rams have fully leaned into the rebuild. And I think both of these organizations, especially the Rams here, are not looking at themselves like we're 1 year away. We're 1 year away from getting right back into it. Now with Stafford on his way out, not knowing with an aging Cooper Kupp and an aging Aaron Donald, they've got to be looking at that situation. And part of why they're rebuilding so hard now is to say this is a 2 to 3 year process to get this back. And I don't think that that's going to as much inhibit them from making that interdivision trade, especially when it's working out in their favor to where Donald off our team, we lose more. Donald to Seattle, Seattle beats us, we lose more. We get closer in our tank to getting to that number 1 overall pick, to getting Caleb Williams.
I'm going to continue to be skeptical about that. If the Rams are willing to trade him to the Seahawks, I'm going to be like, okay, what are you planning here? Is this a sleeper agent situation? Is this is his AC? Do you have a bomb in his ACLs that are going to explode in 2 weeks? Like, I don't know. If the Rams are willing to trade him to the Seahawks, I'm going to be like, okay, something's wrong here. So I'm going to kind of back off of that one.
You think the Rams are worried then about him hurting them? If he was as good as Donald ever, you're thinking they're worried about him coming back in that trade, biting them in the butt a year or two down the line.
That is typically how teams think, isn't it? Even when they're really bad, they feel like we can turn this around quickly. I think a lot of delusion in the NFL. There's a lot of delusion in sports about how quickly you can turn things around. And honestly, some of it isn't delusional. Sometimes it is like, yeah, you can build a contending team very quickly. One off season turns it all around. We see this sometimes.
I think the difference here, though, is the Rams look at their situation and understanding that those teams that do that turnaround have assets to work off of. And the Rams and what they've not had over the last now season or so is assets to work off of. They traded away all of their picks on the front end, and then they spent all of their money. So that rejuvenation of turning around in a year thing, we turned our travails around in a year because we had all of the Bronco picks and our picks on top of it. You know, they're not walking into that kind of same situation. And so instead, I think what they're looking is we've got to build this up. We need to assemble and add right now. And if the Donald's going to bring us back a late first round pick in this next upcoming draft to go trade into the Seattle so that they can have him make the run with them, that adds to our team in the future. That makes us stronger in the future at a time when next time we're good, Donald's not going to be as good as he once is. And so I mean, it's right to say that this is not a trade that normally happens between interdivision foes, but I think the Rams are in a very unusual place as far as this interdivisional foe in this given scenario. It's not to say that they're going to lead with us to be traded, but what if every team in the league is only offering a second, Brendan, and we're the team offering one team offering a first? They're going to say no at that point. They're going to say, no, we don't want to give it to you because
I think they say no.
Yeah, see, I don't think so at this point.
I mean, there's also the stuff here that is not logical. There's also the aspect of we don't want to see our best player ever running around in a rival team's jersey, which I think they care about more than they should. But I do think some of these teams do care about it.
It's possible. I guess I need to see some proof of that being a part of their thinking process. Like we're going to turn a first round pick down because we don't want to see this player in another team's jersey. Or in this specific, we're going to move him to another team's jersey. He's going to be in another team's jersey. We just don't happen to want to see him in a Seahawks jersey. And therefore, we're going to take a second round pick for him to move him to the Dolphins rather than getting the first round pick back from the Hawks. Because that to me, I could see in certain situations that being the case. Again, if we had a team that was a little bit closer to turning around their problems that they have to deal with. But this is a Rams team that cannot be looking at their situation saying by next year, we'll have this turned back around to be a competitor here in this division. By next year, with Seattle stacking all the talent they had, with Niners being as good as they are, next year we'll be back and we'll be right there step for step with them. I know the teams get delusional, but
it makes sense when you lay it all out like that. But I don't think these teams are as logical about this stuff as we would be.
Well, I think
we're
there's
the kinds of guys who will do like a Madden franchise and try to go 0-17 that first year so we can get the best picks and rebuild from scratch. Trade everybody, get everybody out of here. Let's not win a game. Like we do stuff like that. But these teams, I feel like they don't think like that. Some of them should. Don't get me wrong. Some of them should, but I think most of them don't.
There's certainly dumb organizations out there, but I also think dumb organizations do dumb things. As Forrest Gump once said, stupid is as stupid does. And if you have these organizations that operate that way, Brendan, they tend to operate that way. And one of the reasons that the Rams hoisted a championship in the last couple of years is because they don't operate stupidly or emotionally as an organization. They seem to be very tactical about their approach. They're aggressive in their approach, and they're not worried about fainting away from that at any point in time. And they've given no indications of that. They have moves that don't work, but it's rare that they have moves that don't work that you look at and say, that was stupid on the surface of it. What were you doing? That was dumb from the start to the finish on that one. It tends to be that they be one of the, I would say, organizations out there that have been smart in their approach in recent years. So it's hard for me to see them suddenly get dumb in regards to this Aaron Donald situation. And we already know that they're looking at potentially moving him. They're already playing a little bit of that out there. Hey, anybody want this guy? Maybe potentially this offseason. So we already know he's not necessarily like, well, he's a lifer here, we're going to keep him here. So they're already showing a bit of a openness to being pragmatic in their approach to maybe moving him.
Let me ask this also. Why would we be the only team willing to give up a first round pick? Because if anything, we have a GM that values his first round picks more than the average GM. So that scenario, I mean, I think that Pete is different. Pete, was the guy, I think we all know, like, let's just say it. We all know Pete was the guy who said, let's throw all our first round picks at Jamal Adams to get him in here. I want that guy so bad.
Sure.
But I mean, if we're willing to offer a first round pick for Aaron Donald, I got to believe there's another team out there that would be willing to do the same thing. So I'm skeptical of that angle too.
There is, of course, it's none of it happens in just a vacuum. It's also that the teams have to have the ability to take on his base salary through the second half of the year. That's going to eliminate a certain amount of the run of those teams that are out there. And there could be a team that is, if there's a team that's offering a first and you're offering a first and you're going to be in the same draft spot, yeah, Rams will move them to that team, first and foremost over the top of you at that point. But we don't know what his market would exactly be out there, especially considering that they were kind of softly peddling him this offseason, and it didn't seem like they had any strong takers enough to go and make that move. And so if there wasn't that team out there chomping at the bit to throw them the King's ransom this offseason, will there be then at the trade deadline this upcoming year? Maybe. I mean, it's hard to predict. It is, I will acknowledge. But I don't think that if we put the best offer on the table, they're going to turn away from us because they have a fear of him in the future, or they think that they don't want to see him in our uniform. I think what they're going to be in the mode of, because they are in the way they are, is we're in rebuild mode. We need to stack up picks. Let's get the best picks up and let's turn this thing over as quickly as we can.
And also, even when you get through all that stuff I just talked about, the stuff about them willing to trade him to us, I'm not doing it. I'm not doing it for a first round pick. I don't think he's worth it at this
Even
age.
if he's lighting it up. That's if he goes into this season.
I'm not doing it. I would not do it. I would be like, it ends quickly. everything ends quickly. Like these players fall off cliffs when they get to a certain age. I would just feel like we trade him and then he turns into like slightly slimmer Al Woods. I wouldn't do it. He's too old.
It's possible. He's on a different level than slightly slimmer Al Woods. That's not fair because he's on a different level than Al Woods in his level of playing.
I'm saying that's what he would turn into.
And it's possible. The proof's just not there. Is he's not been that. I'm open to something happening. Open to the Rams organization turning into morons tomorrow. I'm open to Aaron Donald falling off a cliff, but we can't blindly predict something happening without any proof to back it into it. And I know you said the pressure rate's down, we're down for Donald, but that's a 90 PFF grade he posted. You don't post empty 98 PFF grades just by like out there sucking it up or being less. That's an elite grade. That's an elite end. 5 sacks in addition to that on top. So he was, over the course of the year, would have produced 9, 10 sacks, maybe not the 15 rate of things. But if I'm getting that from an inside defensive presence moving over the next couple of years, maybe not 15, 16 sacks, but I'm getting 10, 11 sacks from the inside on a guy and what he's bringing there and the amount of tension he's going to draw on there. And he was even still good against the run, like a 75 grade last year. I mean, on that defense, from my standpoint, I still think a 90% Donald, 93% Donald the prime, it's worth it from my end. I'll take that swing. And if it gets me one championship, if it gets me just that championship that year, our strong run to get in that championship, is well worth it to me to go. Maybe this is the price of doing business, in my opinion, for the modern age to get Super Bowl championships. It's not 15 years ago. Now the new modern bill and has shown us with recent teams going through there that you got to go make that move. You got to go push that move to get yourself over the top. And if you don't, you're going to probably fall a little bit short.
Yeah, if I thought it was set 93% Aaron Donald, I'd do it, but I don't believe it's 93% Aaron Donald.
That's
I think
fair.
it's like 81% and very quickly going to be like 62%, then 45%, and then you're the sucker who had to pick up the bill for Aaron Donald. So the Rams got to benefit from his good years, and then you have to, I don't know, I got a bad feeling about it. Like it's amazing how fast these players fall off sometimes, but we see it so much.
It does occur a lot. And your point on that's valid, where it could happen. He's not reached that spot yet. He was not 81% of Donald last year. He had his first injury that cut him off in his career. So he's not injury prone. He's not a guy that's got injuries like every single year he's been dealing with. He's been a guy that's been a picture health. He's a guy that you have to admit is as committed as any football player to keeping himself in shape as you'll find out there, which is a lot of times these older players, they just, they don't have the work ethic anyway. They lose a little bit of the natural ability and now they start getting more injury prone. But if you're taking care of your body, you can sustain yourself, I think, a little bit longer. There's no doubt that it's a bit of a risk, but there's no guarantee that first round pick as well is going to equivalent out to you getting a great player in return, a player that's going to bring the kind of impact he's going to bring, especially if we're talking about a first round pick in the 20s, which has not exactly been the wheelhouse for our Seattle Seahawks when they have had picks in those ranges. They've had quite a few misses in that 20s range. It's not been good for them. So that's part of it too here is I don't put quite as much value as others do on these first round picks and saying that they've got to be these sacred cows or we've got to get the equivalent in return for that or else it's not a worthwhile trade. I think it does still become worthwhile if you get a guy that provide what I think he'd give you impact. And whether or not 93, 88, 90, 93%, I think that's still better than what you're going to find, Brendan, in the draft. And better than what you're going to find on the open market as other viable solutions, because it still remains something that we have to address here at some point here. Maybe it's good enough with just Draymond Jones and whoever else you put out the side of it, but Draymond Jones with Aaron Donald, with the edges that we've got on this team, you're giving Aaron Donald the best edge group that he's ever had to work with. You're giving him the best secondary that he's ever had to work with. And he's going to dip and fall off in that environment. He's going to become 60% of himself in that environment. Maybe, but I'll take that risk. I'll roll those dice.
If he was younger, I would do it, but I can't do it at that age.
I get it.
I think then we'd be the Broncos trading for Russell Wilson. I feel like I think it would turn into that. Maybe not that extreme because Wilson literally turned into the worst quarterback in the league overnight, but would be something similar.
Hold on. Let's push it back though. Again, there's the indications of the performance dropping off, which I think you bring up as a valid point.
Yeah,
I'm not trying to put
which we saw last year, yeah.
But it wasn't that you had Russell Wilson from the second half of the season in 2020 up until the time he left, where you were seeing a drop in play. Statistically, you could look at the stats and go, well, the stats, but you could see in the drop of play was not where he was not the kind of same player. They had gone into a bit of a shell of himself. So it wasn't as much an overnight thing with him happening. You saw the signs of that. I don't think the Donald signs are as clear that he has fallen off that mark or that measure or have that much timeline of data to go off of to make that determination.
No, you need to see the warning signs. You got to act on them. You can't wait for it to be obvious because then everybody knows. That's my thing.
I
That's my
feel you
thing
on
there.
that. And there's a risk here. It could blow up on you. But to me, it is a worthwhile risk to make for the upside. The squeeze is going to be worth the juice on this Donald deal, because I don't think you're getting another guy out there here anytime soon that's going to be a commiserate value. I don't think you're drafting one. I don't think you're signing one. I don't think you have the money to spend. I don't think anybody's going to be offering one in a trade, because these are highly valued positions right now. Maybe the most overvalued position in the sport a little bit as we stand a bit, where it's going from a trend standpoint. And so kind of anticipating all of that, I go to where this comes down the line and go, look, if I can get one now that's as good as anybody else in the league right now, maybe it's not going to last a long time. Maybe there's a risk of an injury. But the alternative thing is, this is the thing you got to say with this, Brendan. What's your alternative option? If you say a no to a Donald's available and you can get him for a first round pick, and you say, nope, don't like the risk. Okay, I'm good with that. What's your alternative then? Because down the road, if you come up this year and you find yourself short of let's say no Donald, you go through this year, you find that defensive line indeed is still not able to stop the run. You find yourself just short in the playoffs of making a true Super Bowl-like run, and you come back from it and you say, yeah, it was the running game. It was the lack of talent on the inside. It was lack of a dynamic interior rusher to really bring us that. If you find it, that's where are you getting now that guy into an off season? Where are you going to go make that deal?
I mean, maybe you don't. Maybe you just have to hit in the draft. Maybe you just have to go find him. It's not a bad draft. It's a really good draft, like you said.
It's a good draft, but you're picking in the 20s at that point, and you're probably not going to be as exposed to then the prime talent they're available to you to go get.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, we've spent way too long talking about something that will never
exactly. It's fun to talk about.
Way too much time talking about something that will never happen in a million years. So let's move on here. But
love considering
I just don't think I wouldn't do it. I can't do it.
I feel you. I feel you on that, man.
All right. Jeffrey Thistle, thank you for the $5. Feel like if the Rams have the season, people think they'll give Aaron Donald what he wants just because he's Aaron Donald. They already extended him.
Yeah.
There's no extension. Like he's already gotten paid. He's
Yep.
probably not ever getting another contract again. He's probably going to retire when this contract's up, I think.
Agreed with Brandon on this, Jeffrey. They paid him they already paid him, so there's not another deal coming down for him.
Mm-hmm. All right. Let's see. The Real Cheese, thank you for the $5. Even if Donald's a shell of himself, he could still teach the young guys. And I imagine his presence is something that would make other teams nervous. I am not paying a first round pick for somebody to teach the young guys. I have coaches for that. He can retire and work for us as a coach if he wants to do that.
I'm with you, Real Cheese. I'm on board with it. Extra value, added value is what they call that, Real Cheese.
But the presence thing, I mean, there is something to that, admittedly. I think that's a little more valid.
Yep. I mean, if he's able to draw any kind of double teams in there, that definitely helps you. It makes defense easier if you can get a guy inside who can pull that. And we haven't had that in recent history. There haven't a lot of guys that we've had there that have commanded that kind of attention.
Garth Knight, thank you for the $4.99. Brendo, I've seen someone put a bomb in a player's ACL before on my New Zealand rugby team. Seagull was consulted to defuse the rest of the team. That does sound like a Steven Seagal movie, actually. That's not bad. I can get behind that.
Under Siege 3, New Zealand. Where's the bomb?
Let's see here. Fat Daddy Stacks, thank you for the $5. Appreciate the stream, but the volume is so low I can barely hear you without standing next to the phone. I haven't heard anybody else say anything about it, so I don't know.
Let us know in the chat if you guys have any issues on the volume.
I listen to things on my phone sometimes, and it's not great. So
yeah,
it might be a phone thing. I don't know, but I haven't. I'm on the same setup I always am. I don't know if you are, but I would assume so.
Yeah, Fat Daddy. I mean, we're operating off the same stuff we normally use, so I'm not sure on that one. We got it amped up on my end as high as it goes. Sorry about that.
Connor Olschlager. I hope I got that right. That's a tough one, but Olschlager, thank you for the $5. Donald's average time to pressure was 2.74 seconds, which is elite. Offense's time to throw against Rams D was 2.58, fastest in league, so production dropped. Yeah, I mean, there's definitely something to be said for the team that he was on.
Yeah.
He was on was bad.
Yeah, it's though that adds up. Those two kind of factors do add up together, and it's part of why I give him a little bit of room on last year a bit with it, because I think I would guesstimate if you looked at his double team percentage, like how often he's double teamed in normal years versus how often he was double teamed last year, I would register to guess that it was the highest rate in his career, one of the highest rates in his career. Why wouldn't you going against that team to face Donald last year?
Yeah. I don't know. There's just a lot of little things there. It's not one big thing. It's a lot of little things with Aaron Donald for me.
I give it to you. It's not an easy, straightforward. This is a no brainer move. I can understand having some reticence on it and not doing it. I just land here myself because this defensive line situation has made me turn it over probably more than I would do on other positional groups. And as I go back and kind of become obsessed with like, what is available here? Who is going to be the guy that can be an answer here to help us out down the road? You're right. There might be that it's just so deep in a defensive line draft this year that there'll be so many guys to pick from that you can find a guy. But I hate counting on that. And the team hasn't exactly like hit home runs over and over again with their defensive line picks in recent years either. So it's not like this is their like, honey spot stroke area where they just always hit, like kind of corners can be for them at times. So I put it all kind of together a bit, and it does put me in a little bit more of the desperate state of like, we got to address this somehow, somewhere. This is going to be a part of the team that we got to figure out at some point. Maybe we can wait on it and we just need to be edge heavy. That's fine. But we're going to at some point or another need to find somebody here that can be a player. Not that Draymond's good, by the way, but just not enough in himself.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so back to predictions. Last thing we did was Thanksgiving. We both have a win now. Mm-hmm. I had a loss initially, but now I feel like there's enough going on in San Fran.
Mm-hmm.
Then we have the road Thursday night. So we have 2 Thursday games in a row against the Dallas Cowboys, November 30th. Mm-hmm. Interesting team in Dallas. They've been good for a couple years now. Really good defense. Added Mozzie Smith. Should be a little bit better. The offense, it's going to be interesting to see. They lost Kellen Moore. They've hopefully going to get Michael Gallup back this year healthy after last year. He really just kind of limped through the season. No Zeke for the first time in a while. So going to be kind of interesting on that side. But what do you see in the Big D?
Yeah, it just feels too like Big D's starting to slide a little bit away from Dak a bit, where I've had some shots of Dak here in training camp. He had one cut I saw yesterday where he threw into Deuce Vaughn on a 9 route into a double team coverage that he threw an interception on. Just a bad throw. And I've seen a few of those from him here in training camp. That line is going to be probably as bad a shape as it's been since he's been there. And it's been kind of reducing ever so throughout the last few years a bit, getting just kind of worse and worse and worse and worse. Lamb gives him some help. Brandon Cooks gives Lamb's a pretty good guy on the other side, and we'll see if Gallup can come back from that ACL. He wasn't back last year. He was definitely still fighting through that thing a little bit. They seem to be a team that can always be able to put up some points, some kind of production with Dak there. Even if he's throwing a couple interceptions, he's still going to throw him for like 3 touchdowns and 280 yards or something on the other side of it. But like we saw with the game that we played him at home a couple of years, you get those picks, you can kind of turn the game the other way around with it when he does give you those opportunities and those chances. The defense is going to be tough. There's no doubt about that. But I do just feel like the Cowboys they're in that stage of in that in-between phase. Sometimes they're a little stronger than in between. Sometimes they're a little weaker than in between. I don't think that they're going to have enough to really they'll still be, I think, a fringe playoff team, but I think we get this game. I'm going to go with the win. It's 5:15. It's not a 10 a.m. game. Primetime game. I like this as a win on this one. I don't think the Cowboys are as good this year.
Yeah, this one I struggle with. It's possible that Dak had his whole career been a guy who doesn't really turn the ball over that much. And then last year, suddenly he turned into an interception machine.
Mm-hmm.
But I always say you want to be in front of the trend. You don't want to wait for 3 years. You don't want to watch a guy. You don't want to have to sit there for 3 years watching a guy be bad before you realize, you know what? I think that guy's bad because everyone else has figured it out.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if they can win this game without him because I think that defense might be the best in the league.
I mean, the defense is going to be really legit, and Mozzie Smith's probably going to help them, no doubt. I mean, he didn't look great in preseason, but you think eventually the tape will fit out with him. I do think that the reason that the interceptions come in can be explained, though, too. Dak and his lack of interceptions early in his career, he had one of the best offensive lines in all football, great receivers on the outside, and a running back that was one of the best in the sport, and they could lean in that way. Now, as the line has started to go backwards, this is my old theory about quarterback play being so heavily driven by the supporting cast you have around you. And as the supporting cast has kind of run into a little bit more of a tatters look to it than it was when he was there early on, the worse he's played with it. And I just think it's moving more into a tatters direction than it is to a direction that's closer to what it was when he first got in there. And that would lead me to believe that this interception trend that you talked about will be one that does persist and is a part of his game going forward.
Yeah, I'm going to say a loss. It's primetime road game. That's a big advantage for their home team. And I just think that defense is super legit. And I wasn't crazy about Mozzie Smith in the first round because he doesn't affect passing plays at all, but maybe that's a team that can afford to do it because they were already so good against the pass and
True.
they really were not great against the run. Maybe that's the kind of team that can just be like, you know what? We know we're getting a really good player. So what if the value isn't perfect? Let's just go. So I'm going to say, I think that's a loss for me.
I think it's fair enough. It's a fringe playoff team to me. If it's the Cowboys is one of the wild card teams out there in the NFC, wouldn't shock me. At least they're one of the front runners to be that, I think.
Yeah, this is when it's so hard though, because you don't know what these teams are going to look like by then. Like for all you know, Dallas goes into a death spiral and they start the season like 2-7, and the players are trying to get McCarthy fired by this point. Like you don't know what these teams are going to look like at all by this point in the season.
Well, to your point on that, like look at the line for them, for instance. You've got Zach Fredericks moved on now. They've not, Tyler Baidez is an okay center for them. The other guy, Zach Martin, now is getting up there in age. Tyron Smith is holding on by a very thin thread to his career where it stands right now. Like that goes into they lose a couple guys in that line and that whole offense falls apart for all intents and purposes at that point. The defense can be as strong as you want to call it, but then the offense is just not in the place to be anywhere near what it was a couple of years ago. You're right. This is a tough one to predict because you don't know what Cowboy team you're exactly going to be facing. And I think that Mozzie Smith pick was driven a lot by, in my opinion, the Giants and the Eagles in their division. They have two teams that are going to try to really run and hammer the ball at you. And the Cowboys went, let's get these guys to do this and get this part fixed up. And we'll see if it's genius or not, Brendan. I do think that I'd have a lot of hesitancy with getting a guy as a defensive tackle in the first round who didn't supply any real pass rush. And he better be one hell of a run stuffer at that point. And he was good at Michigan, but
he is. I
mean, Evan Brown put him on his back in preseason, but we'll see.
He did good against him in the preseason game overall.
Yeah, he got I saw a cut up of him with us against him in the preseason, and we handled him. It was not a good tape for the Cowboys fan released it. And it was like, eesh. So we'll see on the kid.
Okay, so we differentiate there. Then I've got December 10th, first game of December. Woo. Back to Sunday football. We got the 49ers. This one on the road in the Field of Jeans.
There we go. Trying to add up my score here in my head here. I think I'm at 8 or 9 wins right now, I believe. I think I'm at 8 wins. I will go ahead and say we split the series against the Niners. Like the Cowboys game, this is a hard thing to predict about where that Niner team is going to be. I think on Thanksgiving night at home, we got a special spirit resonating through the stadium that's enough to put us over the top. I think then on the road a couple weeks later, that's a tough run on the schedule for us. The Thursday night games back to back. I think the team's just a little sleepy, a little tired at that point, and you're still going against a Niner team that's still probably pretty strong. I'm going to go with an L on that when we split the series with the Niners.
Yeah, it's hard to go from getting blown out 3 times by one team to sweeping them the next year, I think. You would think anyway.
You would.
But the Niners really could be a team that's in a death spiral by this point. I will say that. Like, I'm open to the possibility of them having the season from hell. Because early off-season stuff and the stuff we're dealing with right now before the season starts, it's all kind of trending that way. It could be another 2014 season for the Niners. Could be.
Agreed. And especially his top heavy there. They lose an injury or two. Williams goes down. Kittle stays down. Bosa's late to come back. That can be enough in itself, as simple as that is. That can be enough of an explosive kind of situation to deal with it. They can't overcome it. Let's remember with Trent, 35 years old, a line that's already kind of shaky. How many guys at 35 years old have gone out there and played a full season, played it in dominance, much less just played it?
All right, so we both got a loss there. Next week, December 17th, we got the Philadelphia Eagles coming to town. We haven't lost to the Eagles since Mike Holmgren was coach in 2008.
We're playing a Husky Stadium.
Yeah.
Maybe not then. No, that's right.
Actually, I think you might be right. No, wait.
Wait, did we lose in 2008? Really?
Yeah, we did. I remember that game. The first play of the game, Corin Robinson, 80-yard touchdown catch. And then the whole rest of the game, I don't think we had a first down or something absurd like that. No offense that year. So yeah, Eagles, week 15. Maybe the Super Bowl favorites right now. How do you think we can fare against them?
Let's check out my 8. So I think that this is going to be, at this point, a loss. I like playing it at home on the road. I think that gives us a chance here in this game. But I do have this as my final loss of the season, actually. Eagles can run the ball really well, and they're not going to overthink it. They're not going to force the pass. They'll throw to the pass when you bring up the guys into the box and give them the 8-man boxes. Then they get single coverage on A.J. Brown or Devontae Smith, and they'll go over the top. It's not the most complicated of offenses or, the most, artistic. It's really kind of brute force at times, that Eagles offense, but we're not well set up, in my opinion, to be able to handle that rushing attack of the Eagles, at least as we're currently constructed. We'll see if we made a midseason trade by that point, or as well, Brendan, if this a little bit slightly aging offensive line with Layden Johnson and Kelsey down in the middle, if they can maintain that health through the whole way out, and if they can keep up there. Landon Dickerson, who's had multiple torn ACLs there at left guard, can he hold up throughout the course of the year? We'll see on that. But yeah, I think this is a tough matchup for us. Eagles are my Super Bowl representatory team in the NFL this year out of the NFC. And I just think you're dealing with a bit of a buzzsaw with how they're set up this year.
Not a good matchup. Doesn't feel like a good matchup at all.
No. It's just a tough one. And defensively, they got you too, because they can run. They can run a variety of different rotations out there and be tough all the way around. They got the coverage guys on the outside to deal with your Tyler and your DK. Maybe JSN will catch 15 balls that game or something for us.
Yeah. 15 passes for 43 yards.
Exactly. Little 3-yard out routes all day.
Yep. All right. Garth Knight, thank you for the $4.99. I'm really enjoying Field of Jeans. Haven't heard yet. Thanks, gentlemen. I think it was Mike Florio that started doing that back when the stadium was built, the PF Pro Football Talk guy.
Yeah.
I think he did Field of Jeans. I could be wrong, but I think that's where it comes from.
It's a dumb name. The Levi Stadium is just so stupid. I mean, it's just,
all these stadium names are pretty bad.
They're awful. They could be so much cooler if they came up with like a creative names like they did back in the day.
Let's see here. Primox71. Thank you for the $5. No questions, no comments, just for the love of the show. Well, thank you, Primox.
Appreciate you, Primox. You're awesome, man. Very kind of you.
Thank you. All right. Okay, so home stretch now. We got 3 more games left. We've got a road tilt against the Tennessee Titans. Who will be at quarterback by this point in the season? Who knows? Nobody knows. Who can possibly guess? But this Titans team, they still got Derrick Henry. Still got a couple of things on that defense, but it does seem like they're not in the rebuild yet, but they're headed towards it.
Yeah, another team that's probably a little bit of an in-betweener, right? They're still trying to kind of push when they should probably be like, maybe about time to turn it over this offseason with where you're at, and just not ready to do so. Vrabel's too competitive out there. This is going to be the only 10 a.m. game that I have us winning on the road this season. I think the Titans are a good team. They're not going to be an easy team to take. It's not like we just run over them. But I think, like you, to your point at this point, they're later in the year. I think you're going with one of your younger quarterbacks and trying to get them seasoned in there. And that doesn't mean that you roll with Tannehill, a guy that I don't think they're looking to roll with past this year, and almost absent them winning a Super Bowl. And so by that point, you get the backup core to get a Will Levis, and probably no Derrick Henry, I'm guessing, by that point, because you got to figure eventually he's going to wear down. I like us in this game. We win by a touchdown.
Yeah, Tennessee probably has the worst offensive line in the league right now with all the guys they've lost over the last couple of years. They don't really have that much going on defense anymore. There was a time when they had a really good linebacker duo, and both those guys kind of fell off a cliff, and now I think they're both off the team. Jayon Brown and they had the other guy as well. It wasn't Bud Dupree. I mean, he was never really good for them. But it's just not a very good team at this point, and should be able to win that game, even on the road. By the way, I really like playing in Tennessee in December. I remember in 2017, we went to Tennessee in September, week 3, and it was like 120 degrees, and our defense just melted.
It's worth noting on this schedule, what's nice in general too on the schedule is you look at those first 4-week games. There's none of those games on the schedule because, to your point, it always seems like the NFL always schedules us a Carolina week 1 on the road, 95 degrees with 175% humidity, So that's a lot better dealing with it that time of year. That's for sure.
Yeah. It's good when they're busting out like the big thermometer, the circular thermometer.
Oh yeah.
I feel like you never see any other place than a football field.
Oh no. And they do the shot of the stadium and you get the wavy lines because you're getting the mirages on the stadium. It's so hot and humid too on top of it. And
right.
And they put you in the dark jerseys. They wear their away whites. So you're just a little bit more warmer.
Okay, last game of the year, not the season, but
Nope.
December
Oh yeah.
31st.
There you go. Yeah.
December 31st. So, final day of 2023, we are hosting the Pittsburgh Steelers. Week 17, 105 start. A lot of hype behind the Steelers team lately, I feel like. A lot of people thinking this is the team that makes a big step forward. They got good receivers, they got their rookie quarterback, they got some stuff going on here. But come week 17, how are they going to do against the Seahawks?
Yeah, this is a team, the Steelers, that I think is potentially could make some noise in that AFC that's not really being tracked as much. I mean, they've got a hell of a defense they put together as well that really drives that team at the forefront of things. I think you're going to have enough in a secondary and being able to play this game in the home. This is like the Steelers. The difference between, to me, Steelers playing them at home versus going on the road. It's like the Ravens. The difference in having a team like the Ravens come in and play them at home. I know they beat us at home a couple of years ago with Lamar when he was at his peak MVP powers, but I do like playing this at home versus on the road. And it just seems like we always have a hard time. We've gotten some wins in Pittsburgh too, but it's just a tough place to play. I think this will be a close game. I think the Steelers defense will keep our offense under control enough to where it'll keep it in that close place. But I think we'll have enough, just a little bit more than they do offensively, to push us through. And that'll be the difference in that game as it comes probably down to a little bit in the late third, fourth quarter of things. So I'll lean with us taking the W here.
Yeah, I've said all along, I feel like this is the game that weird stuff happens. It just gets away from us in a really annoying and frustrating way. I think I'm going to hang with that. There's going to be a game this year where things just go a little stupid. And I'm going to say this is the game. I'm talking like Kenny Pickett completes 9 passes, throws 2 interceptions, and then we lose 17-6, something like that. It's going to be, I don't know. I'm feeling it from this one. I've got bad energy radiating from this Steelers game. So I'm going to actually say we drop that one in a surprising bit of an upset.
Okay. I mean, I could see it. Their defense keeps you under wraps, and the offense, Pickett's not going to try to overthrow stuff. He'll take what you're going to give him, and that's Seahawks defense will give you what you're willing to take, and not, as long as you don't want to get too greedy with it, we'll let you have the dink and the dunk, and that guy will be a dink and dunker. So it's certainly possible.
Jeffrey A. Thistle, thank you for the $5 again. Still waiting for the bronze statue of Paul Allen in his box with his nose in the laptop, just like we remember him.
He's got that look that they always cut to. He's looking over that they'd always cut to. I forget the look on his face, always deep in concentration.
I mean, we should do that. That's actually a good idea. Yeah. If we don't do that at some point, that's disappointing.
Yeah, he deserves a statue. I'm not a big statue guy, but what Paul and Allen did and accomplished, saving this team, getting the stadium built, and then going above and beyond that and creating a winning tradition here of football with his willingness to spend money and create the organization as he did. I mean, even down to creating a stadium that had the acoustics designed to take advantage of the sound. I mean, just no detail left unchecked, unmet. And I would love to see it at some point. Hopefully he does get that statue out there in front of the stadium.
Yeah. I mean, the Eagles built a statue because of a play. The Eagles built a statue in front of their stadium off one play. If one play is worth a statue, then I think Paul Allen's definitely worth a statue.
Which play was it?
The Philly special in the Super Bowl.
Did they really?
Foles. Yeah, there's a statue. I think, I haven't seen it in a while. I think it's of Doug Peterson and Nick Foles talking before the play.
Oh my God. Hold on. I did not know this existed.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure there's a Philly special statue outside the stadium.
You're right, it is. It's like well done too.
Mm-hmm.
Oh God. Okay. Hey. All right.
It was a cool play.
It's a cool play. It's just it's a strange moment. Like the coach and it's not even like Montana and Walsh talking like where Montana goes to the ground. He's picking at the grass on like in a kind of moment. Like it's just a normal like talking. Okay. Well, that works.
And it's Nick Foles. It's not even like
I know it's like it's Nick Foles. It's like all right, sure.
And Doug Peterson, who got fired 3 years later.
Yeah, exactly. It's like an odd statue. That's just like an odd. Too soon, too early on that. Let's let this one marinate a little bit, boys.
Yeah. Let's see here. Garth Knight, thank you for the $4.99. This super chat is for Paul Allen, statue or not. I can get behind that.
Yes, all the way, Garth. He's earned it. I mean, he's done everything he could have done and what he created. Hell, he can just wait City of Seattle on top of it. I mean, his impact on that. And Paul Allen was absolutely a guy that deserves that.
Okay, one game left, and we're going back to the bakery this time, I think.
Ooh,
Especially by this point. Like,
I
who
got a sweet tooth.
knows? Who knows what Arizona is going to look like by week 18? They might be pulling Kurt Warner out of retirement. They might be doing, we do a random drawing of every fan in the stadium, and if we pull your number, you get to call a play.
That's it.
You get to play a play. It could be bad.
That'd be fun. That'd be fun if they did. It'd get a lot of people watching if they did. Get a
Yeah.
regular Joe out there to play. Like, you play middle linebacker for one play today. We'll activate you. What the hell?
Yeah, I always said that the Trust the Process 76ers should have done that when they were trying to lose. Like,
Mhm.
own it.
Yeah.
Give fans a reason to go to the game.
Yeah. That'll liven it up a little bit. If you're gonna be bad, at least be entertainingly bad.
Mm-hmm.
That's the nice thing about the Seahawks when they were expansion team early on. Because like they had the coach who came in, he's like, oh, it's not good talent. So I'm gonna run like 6 trick plays a game. Yeah, why not? You don't have the talent to go toe for toe, so get creative with it,
Yeah.
And they were fun. That's part of why I think they captured part of what helped to kind of capture the attention of the Seahawks fan base early on that way was playing so kind of more different than other teams and being willing to think a little bit outside the box and stuff.
So, Cardinals game on the road, do we even need to say it? The real enemy here is not the Cardinals, it is the turf in that stadium.
Yes, indeed it is. Let's just talk about also, we know this is a W, Brendan, but what's really nice about this too, with getting the Rams at the front and the Cardinals at the end of this schedule, is if you go into that final week and you're trying to prep up for the week after you get to the playoffs, be it, maybe you don't have a bye, but you're going to get in the playoffs and there's nothing to be determined in that final week. You have a team here in the Cardinals you can go up against that you basically can get a win with if you do have to get a win, and you can just put your backups out there by that point. And so it's, to me, going to give them a real nice ability to maybe kind of prepare themselves for that postseason play if they can kind of align themselves like that for that final game. We'll see. But that's the one part that stands out to me in that game is the flexibility it'll provide you and maybe getting a de facto bye.
Okay, here's what I'm thinking. Do you guys remember? A lot of guys are probably going to remember this. Do you remember when Matt Flynn threw 6 touchdowns in the last game of the season and turned that into a $21 million contract?
Yeah.
Could Drew Lock throw 6 touchdowns in week 18 against whatever random roster the Cardinals throw out there by the end of the season and get his big contract?
No, because of the fact that the Seahawks have incentives based into Drew Lock's deal. So if they do have him on the field for a single game, they're going to be handing the ball off 24/7. He's got $3 million in incentives.
Yeah. Yeah, actually, I read something today. Apparently, because of all the injury settlements we did, we only have like 3 million in space right now. So we might literally not be able to do that. It'd be like, did you ever see Semi-Pro, the Will Ferrell movie, the basketball one?
Mm-hmm.
Where I think if like they break 100 points, every fan gets a free something or other, and he like doesn't want it to happen because they can't afford it, so he's going around blocking his own team's shots.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
It would be something. It's almost like that. It's not quite that. The David Moore thing from a few years ago when Wilson flipped him the ball with 2 seconds left in the last game,
$100,000,
so he could get his $100,000 incentive. Apparently, the team really did not like that. The team really didn't appreciate that.
Well, what are you going to do? I mean, other players have done that too before. I always thought it's kind of heartless by a team if a player comes within like a yard or 10 yards or like, come on, like the spirit of the whole thing was if he hits this mark, if he's that close to it, give it to him. Like, don't be a dick about it. Mm-hmm. I was under the impression that we had to spend out the full seasons of salaries on players for injury settlements. I was always under the impression that you could do like $10,000, $20,000, you give them a deal. And then that's why they call it a settlement rather than you paying $500,000 of their full salary of a season for if they go down. That was my understanding of that. And
we settled with Joey Blunt and Jonathan Sutherland, right?
Right.
But Vi Jones just goes on IR. So I think he gets paid out in full. A couple other players we had just went on IR. I think they get paid out in full. I'm not sure if that's exactly how it works, but that's my understanding.
Okay. Yeah, I'd be interested to see where we're at salary cap wise, because that's certainly going to become important with us about making any moves. I'd be shocked if we got ourselves in a position that where we're standing right now, where we can't make any move because we pushed ourselves up to the end of the cap as it is. I would reckon to guess that there's a little bit of flexibility to go do something. Maybe not an over the top move, but make some kind of move from a creative fashion.
Yeah, I mean, if you absolutely have to, you can throw a void year on somebody's contract. Like just call up DK and be like, "Hey, do you want us to get so and so? Then let's throw a void year in." And he has no reason to say no, right? It's not like he loses money.
Yeah. And you're not sitting on a tremendous amount of dead money. You're not sitting a lot of that. You've got that freedom you talk about. Like you haven't already, you convert, I think, one, contract based to bonus and digs, and that's basically it. So you have you can call upon those if you really want to call upon them. If as we've seen with any of these deals in the NFL, if you really want to get it done, even if you supposedly are up against the cap, you can find a way to get it done. It just depends on how motivated you really are.
Right. And I mean, if we start this season really well and we feel like we're one player away, I could get behind it. I mean, like I know we spent forever talking about the Aaron Donald thing already, but if it happened, I would be like, okay, yeah, this can really work. Don't get me wrong. I would definitely be like, wow, this could be awesome for us. I would just, it's like if we traded for Chris Jones, I would feel the same way. I'd be like, wow, this could really work. But then I would also have that concern of like, wow, this could really blow up in our faces.
The boom bust factor there, where some players you get that you feel like, okay, this is got a middle of the road feel to it. That's there with those two deals. And I wouldn't deny it. And I don't think it's something to just tacitly like gloss over and go, yeah, there's a risk there. No, it's a risk. And it's something that, look, we've been bit in the butt. The Percy Harvin trade, the Jim. This is why I was pushing back when you saying, well, they don't give a first round picks. You might have been right that it was Carroll driving these, but you've done the Harvin trade, you've done the Jimmy Graham trade, you've done the Jamal Adams trade, you've done the Sheldon Richardson trade for a third rounder, you've done the Clowney trade for a third rounder. I know those aren't first rounders, but you've been willing to give draft compensation for players. And it would be a risk and it could blow up on us. But if he's doing Donald-y like things and looks very close to that Donald, and you can add that guy, and knowing you don't have those other things to add. I mean, if we had 4 Lawrence-like players or Wilkins-like players out there, if we had 4 Derek Browns that were on the market that were going to be available as we turn the corner in the upcoming season into free agency, I would change my tune with this. But my anticipation on this one is that the tackles from a trend standpoint are going, if you have the running backs going this way as far as their devaluement, the defensive tackles are going this way as far as their valuement goes. And that to me means that this is going to get more scarce as far as finding good defensive tackles on the open market. And that you got to, when there does become one available, you've got to jump when it does happen, because it's not going to last long and it's not going to come back around anytime soon, probably.
Yeah. It's just, I will say, if Donald comes out and is killing it to start the season this year, that might make me at least, that would change my perspective at the very least. It has to, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like you're always trying to take in new information and then reevaluate your position based off that information.
You're right. And and on the other side of that, if he comes out and you talked about he's 80%, if he's coming out and he's posting 80 grades, 78 grades, and you're seeing the run grades go from 75 to 65, and the pressure rates be down and the sacks, well, that also informs you on the other side of it. Like you say, okay, the drop off is kind of coming now. We're starting to feel it's picking up speed, as we see, like you were referencing with players, where it starts out and I lost a step, lost another step. Oh, yeah. It just kind of goes. So that does go that way. And he's the guy that's undersized. He needs the quickness. Yeah. He needs that twitchiness to be able to be the player he is. Can't lose that.
Yeah. There is a reason why he was not the number 1 overall pick. There is a reason why I think he was outside the top 15 or something.
13.
No, wait, he was 13th. He was 13th, I think.
13th. But he's not a guy like a Ndamukong Suh complained to being 35, 36, because when he loses his step, he was always a guy that could lean back on this unbelievable amount of power to him as a player that he could go to. And that's the part where, when Donald loses that, he does have the power, but he needs the combination of the power with the quickness to make him what he is. So that'll be the part to track.
Okay. So anyway, that's the whole schedule. We did it.
We did it
all 18 weeks. It took a while. We got sidetracked a couple times, but that's not a bad thing, guys. There's a lot to talk about with this team.
Hell yeah, there is. Nothing but good things too.
So I landed on 11-6. I did have a 3-game losing streak in there, so the rhythm of the season's a little bit funky. But I just, it's artistry. You just kind of go with how you feel as you go through it.
Yeah, it's always hard to predict these things. I'm 12-5 on the other end of it. I felt pretty firmly line this way for a while. I like the way the schedule sets up for us, Brendan. I like that we can get out in front of this. I mean, you and I both have that Giants as a loss, but that very easily could be a win. You could be going into that Bengals game 4-0, giving yourself a little bit of ahead of things on this season. So often with the Seahawks teams, we're always seeming to have to make a run up at the end of the year, make up ground at the end of the year. We could maybe get ahead of it this year a little bit with it at the start of this schedule. And that encourages me about it. I really liked, after really looking through the schedule and second viewing it, I actually liked how it was set up just in the rhythm of it and how you're getting these games and where you're getting these games and how the stuff's stretched out. And, there's a tough run of games there with that Niner, Cowboy, Niner, Eagle run. That's obviously your tough run there.
Yeah.
But everything else is pretty workable and manageable to me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And would 11 or 12 wins win the division? Because that Niners team, we already talked about the bad vibes. They're still a good team, but I feel very confident that we can pencil in at least one loss this year from the Niners just because of the kicker thing. They're going to lose one game they should have won because they don't know what they're doing at the kicker spot. Jake Moody shanking everything in preseason. They can't sign Gold because it's going to cost too much money. You got the Bosa stuff. It's they're going to lose some games they should have won because of this nonsense, aren't they?
I think they are, Brendan. I'm closer that we get to the season, the more closer I get to starting to actually cost them a game, because the way I looked at the schedule was us at 12 wins, them at 13 wins. They get a feast on the same NFC West that we do. They have a very workable schedule in addition to that. So on paper, to me, I thought them at 13 wins, but that was before this Nick Bosa thing went. That was before I had some worries and concerns about that offensive line and pass protection. I'm sure you saw the screenshot of Purdy the other day with the last preseason game he played, where there was this free shot that somebody had of Purdy making a throw, and he's on a 7-step drop with no play action. And the guy has an arm out to almost hit him in the arm in the very same way of the injury that he sustained in that Eagle game. It's literally like the guy's arm's like right here hitting the same spot he got hit on, that same surgically repaired arm. I do worry about that, but let's just say it fits the form. I think they get to 13 wins. If they are indeed as vulnerable as they're looking right now, and as you say, things, the energy wise just is off a little bit, that costs them a game or two. And then it comes down to us at them at 12-5, us at 12-5. We split the games. We have the same divisional record. What's the tiebreaker at that point? Conference record basically is the determinant factor at that point. But it's going to come down to neck and neck with us and them, I think. And it's a game difference, or we're tied with them at the end of the year when it's all said and done, I think.
And I guess that is everything for this show. So thank you, everybody, for showing up. We had a great show, great turnout tonight. Everything went awesome. Oh, one last dono, Jeffrey, go Gadget Mariners. That's all. Mm-hmm.
Let's go. And if you're not, get subscribed over to my Mariner channel, Crow's Nest. I'm doing live streams over there on that side. Where did you, Brendan? Let's give them a quick. We'll just real quick. We don't have to spend time on this, but how far you got the Mariners Seahawks going to the playoffs as an 11-5 team, 11-6 team, and then give me your two Super Bowl teams, Super Bowl winner.
I think they win a game. I'm wondering though, is it going to be road or home? Like if we might go back to Detroit first game of the playoffs, right? They might win the division with the worst division winning record. Mm-hmm. And yeah, we can go in Detroit and win. I think we can do that. Mm-hmm. No problem. It's going to be a dome. Conditions are not going to affect us in any negative way. But then you run into a team like the Eagles, and I think you're just kind of hitting the buzzsaw a little bit.
Yeah, I think I see the same thing where we're eventually running into the Eagles. I'd love to say it feels like to me we can get to the conference championship this year and get a couple wins and push through. But I do think that once you get to the Eagles, they're just with the draft class they had and the returns. I think they're going to get off this draft class this year to build upon what they did last year. They're going to get over the top and back to the Super Bowl again this season. But I think you get to a conference championship this year with the Seahawks team, and they take steps forward, and we feel very good about what we have going on into the future.
Okay, so
Super Bowl teams.
I'm gonna say we're in the conversation, but we don't get there.
Mm-hmm. And I'm gonna go with Eagles and shoot, man, I'm struggling with my AFC representation here. I'm struggling. I'm gonna go I'll go Eagles and let's just have fun. We'll go Bills and Eagles.
I'm gonna say Eagles. I'm going to say Eagles Chargers.
That was my other team. That was the other team I was looking to go to was the Chargers.
Chargers or Bengals? I feel really good. It's going to be one of those teams.
Yeah. I agree. It does feel kind of like when in one of these realms of these teams, they're really well put together, and all of them are Super Bowl worthy in the type of talent they put, coaching staff, all of it.
Yeah.
So AFC is a bloodbath, man. I'm glad we're
Mhm.
not over there. That'd be a brutal every week.
All right. Well, thank you everybody for showing up. We still got 300 people in here. We had 350 pretty consistently throughout the meat of the show. Hope you guys had fun. Next show is going to be, I believe, on Tuesday. We're going to do some individual predictions, which concerns like the players on the team, which is something fun that we didn't do last year, because last year we thought it was going to be kind of depressing. Last year we thought it was going to be not so great. We didn't really want to talk about it. But this year, there exists the possibility of things being really awesome.
That's right. Got some actual things to chew on. So, yeah.
So thank you everybody for coming out. I will be going live on Twitch a little later, probably doing Baldur's Gate. Hope to see you guys there if that is something that you're interested in watching. Brandon, I want to thank you for coming out to the show this week.
Appreciate you.
Can't wait for another one.
Me too, man. Looking forward to Tuesday.
Yeah. So great show. We are 8 days away from Seahawks football. We are 5 days away from real NFL football of some kind. So it snuck up on us a little bit maybe, but we're right there. And given the fact that we're right there, there's just one more thing that need to be said. But it has to be said.
Got to let them know.
Yeah. So here it is. And hopefully you guys will remember for the remainder of your weekend. For some of you, going to be a 3-day weekend. So
don't let it slip out of your mind.
Yeah, you got to remember.
Championship season, championship mindset. It's always there. Keep it at the forefront.
Go Hawks.
Go Hawks.